everybody, it's me, Ted, and that's Qatherine.
Hello.
That was your cue to say hello, Qatherine.
I said hello.
You're not. Yeah, you did. You waited an obnoxiously long time. And by that I mean like a second. Whatever. Anyway, we're late as always. The 3DS version of Dragon Quest VIII came out like way back in January, so we're about 3 months late, which is that better or worse than Dragon Quest VII?
I don't remember. I'll use lab as an excuse for this one, because it's been a busy...
You use that as your excuse every time.
That's true. I mean, it ended up being about the same length. Maybe a little bit shorter. But anyways.
No, Dragon Quest V, I'd say... Not 5. Dragon Quest VIII, I'd say, is generally a shorter game. It's just... there's just not as much side quest-y type stuff to do, I guess. Whatever, we're getting into content. Anyway, but yes, Dragon Quest VIII just came out 3 months ago on the 3DS. It's a port of the PS2 version, which came out in 2004?
2003, 2004 in the US.
Yes, okay. And yeah, this is... If you're a Dragon Quest fan in the United States, there's a decent chance that this is one of the first Dragon Quest games you ever played.
Or Europe, because this is the first Dragon Quest game to be released in the PAL region.
Yes, it was. Thank you for mentioning that, because I almost forgot. So, if you're a Western Dragon Quest fan, this is probably one you're very familiar with. So, I know a lot of people were excited with the 3DS version.
Also helped by the fact that the PS2 version included a demo for Final Fantasy XII, as marked in very large text on the box. So, I think that got a lot of people's attention.
Yeah. But yeah, we were playing the 3DS version. Now, just for a little bit of history, neither me or Qatherine had played the PS2 version before this. This was both of ours first experience with Dragon Quest VIII. And that's because both of us had been brought into the series with the DS entries, the DS remakes of the Zenithia trilogy, to be specific. And then we played 7 on the 3DS. I have played 3 on the Game Boy Color. And we're working our way around spin-offs and other things. But yeah, this was our first experience with Dragon Quest VIII, and it was interesting considering that this is like the one Dragon Quest game that the gaming culture at large over here seems to have a large familiarity with. This was around the time, its original release was around the time when PS2 RPGs were booming, with games like the Tales of series, Final Fantasy, 10 and 12, Disgaea, I believe, had started up around that time on PS2. There's a lot of RPGs coming up around that time. So it was, like, not quite PlayStation 1 RPG insanity, but get kind of close up there. But, yeah. I was excited for this because it was a Dragon Quest game that I knew a lot of people liked, so I knew it was going to be a good time, but I also wanted to know whether or not my opinion would match with the norm, because it tends not to, and whether it would live up to the hype it had built for itself.
Cool.
Qatherine.
What do you want me? You didn't say anything.
I want you to think of that's your cue to. Oh man, we are so bad at this discussion thing.
Are we going to talk about the game?
Well, it would be a good idea if you talked about what you expected pre-playing the game and stuff.
That's
why I mentioned.
Interested to play the game. I don't know. I didn't know. All I knew going into it is that people really liked the characters. I honestly think Jessica is one of the only Dragon Quest characters that you could put at a Runaway Guys style Throne Controllers panel type thing, and people would actually know who she is. Like a decent
for Dragon Quest, yeah, basically, yeah.
I can think of 2 big reasons why they would know who she is.
3?
Well, that's harder to see, the third one. So I knew I was excited to kind of go back. I was hoping there would be more characterization compared to 7, where a lot of the characters weren't terribly interesting. And I was my biggest one of my first RPG games that wasn't Pokemon was Final Fantasy X on the PS2. So I was going into this game with the context that it was of that era. And in a lot of ways, I'm probably going to compare the two a fair bit because like they both were a graphical leap for their respective series. They both were the first game in their respective series to have voice acting, and they have a very cinematic style of cutscenes. Now, Final Fantasy definitely was able to be more cinematic in 7, 8, and 9 because of the 3D graphics, but 10 really went 10 was the game that introduced having the models they have the good models for cutscenes and the less good models for outside of cutscenes. And in 10's case, they had a lot of fancy smancy CG cutscenes. And similarly, Dragon Quest VIII went with a more cinematic style for cutscenes. These are actually direct, the cutscenes have sort of framing, and it feels like, watching them. You could, Dragon Quest VIII, I think, is the first game that you could make one of those 6-hour Dragon Quest VIII the movie videos on YouTube out of.
Yeah, probably, especially since the game is much more, I don't want to say it's less non-linear, but the story is much more focused. You can't see pieces of the story out of order like games like 3 or 7 or
4 and 5 also. In 4 and 5 you get to a point where it's you can do one of these 3 things and it doesn't really matter which thing you do first. In Dragon Quest VIII, it's you have to do this thing next.
Yeah, it's much more structured in that way. But yeah, so anyway, we're going to talk about the gameplay first, because obviously being a big RPG story is a huge part, but we're also going to put that behind a massive spoiler barrier, so don't worry about that. So, the big thing about the game is, let's start with the battle system first, because that's actually pretty simple this time around. They made a few small changes to the battle system, but not the big change is tension. Tension is the big new mechanic added to Dragon Quest battles. And just to put this into context, Dragon Quest does not change its battle system very much. It's been basically the same standard attack, spell, defend, run item system since Dragon Quest 2 and 3. They don't occasionally you can change how certain characters act, and they have skills instead of spells or whatever, but this is really the biggest new gameplay thing added to the battle system in years. So it's a pretty big deal. It seems to have been accepted. It did well because it's in practically every game after this, so people like it. And basically what you can do is, instead of attacking or using an item or a spell, you can choose to use your turn to psych up. And what that does is it increases your tension. And if you tense up enough times, it'll add a multiplier to your next attack, spell, even support stuff. If you tense up before an attack, you do more damage. If you tense up before healing, you heal more, etc. And it sounds like a minor thing, but it really does add a lot of strategy to a lot of the battles,
Absolutely.
Especially late game.
And I would say early game, they try to teach you the importance of tension with this one enemy in particular, the frog face enemies, where they look like normal frogs, but once you hit them, they turn around and they have faces on their backs, and when they're in the back facing position, they start unleashing really nasty spells. And you run into a few variants of these enemies in traditional Dragon Quest fashion, palette swaps. And after your first run-in with them, and you realize, oh, when I hit them once, they become more dangerous. You realize one way to deal with them is to hit them once hard enough to kill them. And how do you do that? You psych up, so that you're at 20 or 50 tension before you hit them, and you can one-hit KO them. So
another thing you can do is try to hit all of them with two mass hitting moves. I tried to do that. I'd have Jessica and Angelo both use a spell or something, and then that way they get flipped back around to normal frogs, which are less dangerous. Yeah. But sometimes your characters go out of order, and that plan just
and when you first run into him, it's in Alexandria Tower when the only characters in your party are 8 and Yangus, and Yangus doesn't really know any crowd hitting moves at that point. So I think they specifically did introduce those enemies to try and subtly teach the player how tension works.
They also had the Hammerhood mini boss in the first dungeon as well. He kept on tensing up too, and I think they did have enemies use tension, at least minor tension, like boosting up once, in order to teach you this is how this works. You can do it this way. There's not really ever a huge tutorial on it. Like, I think the most you'll get is a couple of NPC lines talking about how you should use tension on these enemies because it'll allow you to kill them easier, or things like that.
And if you, like, and I know later on there are some enemies that can be really nasty if they get their tension up high enough.
Yeah. And bosses, too. Some bosses can tense up, and but that's... so basically, that's the big new change for the battle system itself. Other than that, though, what's interesting about Dragon Quest VIII's battle system is that in the PS2 version, you only had 4 characters, so that's your entire party is just your party. You can't change out any characters. So instead, how you and there's no class system either. They dumped that. So instead, how you customize your character is through skill points, which is...
So the way the skill point system works is at each level you get a certain number of skill points, and each character has 5 different things they can spend the skill points on. They're predetermined, like Jessica can never use a lance. Jessica has 5 things that she can spend her skill points in. Everyone has these 5 things, and at least one of them is exclusive to that character. And in the game does tell you in the 3DS version, I'm not sure if this was the case in the PS2 version, you do see what abilities you can unlock. And in some cases, you might be like, I don't know what a Twin Dragon Lash is. Is that any good? But in some cases, you can look and see, okay, Jessica can get Kazing if I put enough points into staves. Or Jessica can get a sexy beam. I wonder what that does.
Oh, well, I'm gonna need to well, whatever, we'll get to that.
We'll talk about
But anyway,
Jessica.
I believe the PS2 version did not tell you what you could get and when you could get it, and that, I think, is a pretty big problem, because you don't know what you want to put your skill points in if you don't know what they're building towards.
For example,
but thankfully, the 3DS version is better about that. You get a list. You can see everything perfectly clearly.
For example, 8, the hero... Oh, by the way, the official name for the hero of Dragon Quest VIII is 8. That's what he's called in all the official media in Japan.
It's so stupid.
It's really weird because almost every other hero has like a name that he's called in, like, whether it's the default name, or if there was a novelization or a manga version, they have a name that isn't just like a number. But 8 is 8, so I will call the hero 8. So 8 gets defending champion really early in his fisticuffs tree, and you might be like, oh, that's a cool ability. I should get that for Yangus, because Yangus is a tank. Yangus never learns defending champion, so I could imagine on the if you had the PS2 version of the game, maybe you put some points into Yangus's fisticuffs and were like, wonder when I'll get defending champion for Yangus.
Especially since using fists as a weapon themselves, I really don't see the point in it, because you just get more damage using weapons. I can't really see much of a point to using fisticuffs. You put points into fisticuffs to get other abilities. You don't use it so that you punch things better. Like, maybe early game the stat bonuses would be better than weapons, but then you'd just be screwing yourself out of the late game, and the early game isn't too bad in terms of difficulty.
No.
So yeah, I mean, I will say in general, I do like at least the way it is in the 3DS version, I like the skill points system a lot. It allowed me to feel like I had a say in what my characters were good at and weren't good at, but it also allowed the game to be focused as well. Because that was one of our big issues with Dragon Quest VII, was that since everybody could do everything, nothing was an issue at all. And this allowed the game to be much more focused, and you didn't ever need a specific skill from a specific tree in order to do well. It was always just, you always had something that could work no matter what you put your points into, and I really appreciated that.
Absolutely. I agree. I really liked the skill point system just because, pretty much for the same reasons. It felt like you had a choice in what your character was good at, and you could try to think strategically about what moves would be most useful to have at this time. And yeah, I liked the character as well, that each of the like, especially the exclusive ones, gave you like let's skate past the fact that Jessica has a skill tree called sex appeal, but like Yangus's skill is his humanity, and that allows him to learn healing spells, which actually were pretty handy like in the very early game to have Yangus as kind of a backup healer. Angela's skills are charisma, and some of those are really, really useful, and that the heroes is courage. Like, I thought that added a sort of cute little bit of character to it, in addition to obviously the practical utility of it.
Yeah, and there was also a decent amount of variety too. Like, you could feasibly go through an entire game with the hero not ever putting a point into swords. And that's actually, like, if I were to play the game, that's probably how I would do it. I wouldn't put any skill points into swords, because spears are much more useful for the majority of the game.
I disagree, just because Falcon Slash is pretty boss.
Hey, you get multi-thrust, though. That gives you 3 attacks.
I don't think
that's 3. That's 1 more than 2.
I think each of them does less damage, though.
Sometimes you get 4 attacks. That's 2 more than 2.
And I think Oomph only affects the first hit.
Yeah, but that's still the same with Falcon Slash.
Yeah. But
that's the same with every... You know, I'm saying Demon Spear is pretty... that leads into the next big thing that they added with the game. Look at how good we are.
Nice.
Alchemy. That was another big change added to this game, is that there's a very basic alchemy system, where you can mix, if you've ever played Paper Mario, it's actually very similar to the cooking system in that game, where you can, it's really nothing too complicated, but it's very cool. You can basically take 2, sometimes 3 items, and you mix them together in the alchemy pot, and out pops something else. So hold on, I'm going to actually pull up a Dragon Quest wiki at the moment, because I really do not want to make a mistake about this, but at least in the way that the 3DS works, you just when you put the stuff into the it's true. Okay, so I'm sorry, I babbled. In the PS2 version of the game, alchemy was not instantaneous like it is in the 3DS version. Yeah, you had to run, and for some things you actually had to run like upwards of 15 minutes in order to do stuff. And if I played the game like that, I think I would hate alchemy, because part of why I loved it was like mixing things over and over and over again, like immediately, and like finding new stuff like one after the other after the other. I thought that was really, really fun.
Yeah.
But if I had to walk like 5 minutes in order to get something new, I think I would hate it. So yeah,
and you do get an upgrade that eliminates the mix time, but it's one of the things that you get, one of the special rewards that the post game boss gives you.
Oh really? Ugh.
Yeah, like, you know how like he can give you Hev and like the special equipment. One of the things on the list in the PS2 version is like the final upgrade to the alchemy pot. And the other change, so yeah, the PS2 version, you had to wait for things to cook, and you also could only alchemy. I don't think you could alchemy like 5 of the same thing, because in this version, if you wanted to make like 5 elfin elixirs, you can do that and make them all in one go. You don't have to sit there and like just mash through to make 5 of them. You can just tap the number from 1 to 5, and then you make 5 in one time. You can't do that in the PS2 version. Yeah,
I'm glad they changed that.
They just basically improved the alchemy pot straight up for the 3DS version. Yeah, so the alchemy pot is super fun. It's super fun playing around with it. Although, am I the only one who sometimes screwed up and made something worse with the alchemy pot?
Well, it's necessary in some instances, because like sometimes if you need a cursed item and to make something different and you'd already upgraded it, like being able to degrade it back down to what it used to be to make something else is actually very helpful.
Yeah.
But that's only if you're hunting for specific things.
Yeah. Or if you want to just fill out the recipe thing, because one of the funniest recipes to me is if you combine like the super spicy cheese and the like the cold cheese, you get plain cheese. All that work for nothing.
Yeah.
And then there's a bunch, and I think I didn't do this because I got nervous, but I'm pretty sure you can downgrade the liquid metal sword back to a rusty sword.
Yeah, you can. I think you mix it with like horse manure or something.
Yep, that's exactly what showed up when I was looking at my alchemy pot. I was like, I can mix the liquid metal sword with horse manure. That doesn't sound like it would be an upgrade. I think I'll hold off.
I always quick saved before messing with the alchemy pot every single time.
For the record, guys, quick save is
broken in this game.
And I think they knew it. I'm pretty sure they knew it. You can quick save anywhere.
They have to have known. They had to have known it. It's been this since 4.
You can straight up save anywhere because of the download item feature. You could be outside the final boss's like. Oh no, you can't actually because of how you go to the final boss. But you could be right outside like where you run into Dhoulmagus and just like, all right, Dhoulmagus, I'm gonna fight you, but hold on, I want to see what I can download. Yo, candy cane, that's baller.
Yeah. Oh man, but yeah, but anyway, at least with the improvements that they added in the 3DS version, I really like the way alchemy works. Oh, we should mention other changes for the 3DS version.
Can we just finish talking? And the other thing I really thought was awesome about alchemy was the fact that if you're like a veteran Dragon Quest player, I don't know if I can call myself a veteran, but I've learned from a veteran, and you examine everything, like all the bookshelves and like stuff, then you find recipes for alchemy, and what I love is that it saves them. So like you'll find a note where someone's saying like, I had my helm and I was cooking some milk in it, and then like horse manure fell into it, and then suddenly it changed. And it'll say, like, you learned a new recipe for the alchemy pot. Mithril helm plus cow pat plus fresh milk gives raging bull helm, or whatever it's called. Like, I loved that. Yeah. I loved how you, like, were finding recipes. It was so much fun.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. It also made it more fun to, like, to examine the books as well, because, like, normally the books say stupid stuff. In Dragon Quest, that can occasionally be amusing, but it's not necessary by any means. Like, then it makes you actively want to read every book, because not only might it be entertaining, but you can also find something useful in it as well, and that I think is really cool. Yeah. On top, the other major gameplay changes that the 3DS version added over the PS2 version, one is no more random encounters. The encounter system works much like Dragon Quest VII 3DS, where when you run into an enemy, enemies will roam the overworld, and if you physically walk into it, that will initiate a battle, which I think everybody can agree is just an improvement overall.
I like having the option. I think it would have been interesting if they just had an option to go back to random encounters, because I wound up being, like, especially in early game, I was nervous that I wasn't, like, because it's so easy to dodge enemies in this game, that I was worried, am I like getting the number like encounters I should? Am I gonna fall behind on EXP? Because the game has a weird sort of difficulty curve at times, so I was worried. But overall, it's super handy because you can just basically use it to, if you want certain encounters, you can make sure you get them very easily.
Yeah, I think it's an improvement. You can. If you don't fight enough encounters, then that's on you, basically, I always feel like, because the enemies aren't too hard to dodge, really, so if you're, like, walking, it eliminates the aggravation of, oh, you're almost dead, you need to walk back to town, and you'll almost make it, and then you die to something stupid on the overworld, because you can't run away, because Dragon Quest flee chances are a little bit low. And it also makes things like hunting for metal slimes, because you can see where a metal slime is on the screen a little bit easier, and I think it's an improvement overall. I guess a Bravely Default styled feature where you can turn the random encounters either completely off or up to max if you wanted would be nice, but then again, not everything can be Bravely Default, so
overall, I'm happy with it, because yeah, it's super convenient to be able to see the enemies.
Other than that, the other major change in the 3DS version gameplay-wise, aside from some minor, like, stat tweaking and move balancing, was two extra playable characters. In the PS2 version, your main party was just the hero, Yangus, Angelo, and Jessica. That was your party for the entire game. The 3DS version, you get two extra characters on top of that. Red, the thief, and Mori, the monster arena guy. We'll talk more about their characters, like how they are personality-wise, later. But, I mean, having extra characters is fun and all. And I enjoyed using both of them in battles a lot, but I also feel like they felt kind of like an afterthought in terms of the story. Because a lot of story events just straight up don't acknowledge that they exist.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you can have certain story events, if you have them in your party, the game just assumes you have Angelo or Jessica or Angus in your party instead, and it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, the worst example of that, like, at least when you beat the final boss, they're there in the going away from the final boss, and they get, like, specific dialogue. But the worst, there's one example in particular. I'll just say, because I'll just say it's Purgatory Island. I won't say why until we get there. But it makes no sense. Like what? Like Red just like is like, "Go on, Benny, I'm out of here. Jessica, take my spot." And just like what? She just dives out the window and shoves Jessica in her place, and Jessica's the one who gets it. Like it made no sense.
Yeah, especially since like if you had like Angelo out of the party, it's like implied that he's back at the wagon, so they just pulled him from the wagon, but Trode also didn't go either. It makes no sense. And also you get them very, very late too. Like you get Red around the halfway point of the story, I would say, roughly.
So the earliest you can get Mori is after things are resolved in Arcadia. That is because Mori, you get to join your party by beating the highest rank of the monster arena. And if you get to the highest rank before events in Arcadia, Mori will say, "I need some time to get things ready," and you can't actually do that rank. So they locked Mori behind that for good reason. I think it would be too hard to balance the game if you could have 4 characters for a certain boss fight where you normally have 3 because of plot reasons.
Now, not to mention he comes at you at like level 35, and if you know your Dragon Quest, endgame is usually roughly 40. So the fact that you get Mori at level 35 just shows you just how late into the game you get him. And like, I mean, granted, I'm always happy to have extra characters, and Red and Mori in particular make certain post-game stuff a lot easier because of their specific arrangement of skills, and they are fun. It just, for one, I can't help but feel like I would have liked a larger cast just in general. I think 7 to 8 is a good amount of characters for this style of game. That's just my opinion. And also, it adds variety, and also, it feels like they were tacked on. You can go through the whole game without getting Mori at all. Like we said, it's optional, and Red just kind of hangs around. And Red just kind of hangs around after you get her because she wasn't written into the story. After she just doesn't need to be there, so she just doesn't have much to do or say.
I liked Red's party chat just because I liked her personality.
The party chat
her personality is very sharp, and like she often said things that I found to be like very insightful, or things that like she had very keen observations about what was going on, and I really appreciated that. And yeah, she's cool in general. So I actually liked Red's party chat. Mori's party chat was kind of goofy because Mori's kind of a goofy character.
Yeah. Well, I'm more talking about in terms of story stuff. In terms of their character and party chat, I liked both of them. I liked having them.
Apparently, some cutscenes are changed with one or the other of them in them, but I don't know what all of those are.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of. We'll talk about changes that were made for the PS2 version when we know about them, but obviously we haven't played the PS2 version, and we don't have a huge... So if we miss stuff, we apologize in advance. Or at least I do. Qatherine might not be sorry. But we'll talk more about like how we feel about those characters when we get the plot stuff. But yeah, the gameplay, I will say, is very, very sharp overall. I mean, it's Dragon Quest. Dragon Quest is fun because Dragon Quest is Dragon Quest. If you want to hear us talk more in depth about why we like certain parts of the gameplay, I actually think we talk a lot about it in our DQ4
because that was my first DQ game, so I was reacting to a lot of it more there.
Yeah, and so it's still really more of the same. really, a lot of it's more about the situations the story brings you through that occasionally bring. It's really more the pacing that I would want to talk about in terms of the gameplay, but that also kind of comes with the story. Yeah. The only thing I think gameplay-wise that I can kind of criticize that's not really spoiler heavy is that I don't like that every dungeon had a boss in this game. Pretty much everyone.
There were a lot more end of boss dungeons in this game compared to other entries in the series that I've played.
Yeah, and it kind of, to me, felt kind of like it was missing the kind of the feeling of Dragon Quest, because if you know like in a typical Final Fantasy game, for instance, in many games like it, at the end of the dungeon there's the boss. Like, that's kind of how things work. Dragon Quest isn't really like that. A lot of the times, like, if you're going into a dungeon to get a thing, once you get the thing, you can warp out or walk out, and you don't have to fight a boss at the end. If there's no reason for a boss to be there, there usually isn't one. But in Dragon Quest VIII, there are a lot of points where they kind of shoehorn in a boss where it doesn't feel necessary, and a lot of those bosses are really annoying, like, too. It kind of made it feel like it lost some of the charm.
I would say the biggest example of that is the Tortured Soul boss fight, because there was...
Yeah, that's Mayella Abbey. That's one of the earliest dungeons.
But it was just game. Like, there was... Okay, like, we needed, like, Geyser, or however you're supposed to say his name, like, okay, we need a first boss.
Yeah,
He'll
that
make
was...
a good first
and
boss.
That was funny.
That was funny.
That was funny, too. Yeah.
But, like, no... And, it makes sense that the guy's there. Why was there a Tortured Soul under the old Abbey? And, like...
And they never bring up any of that stuff ever.
No, we
again,
don't. I still don't know what why the Abbey got ruined in the first place. So like, that was the kind of boss where I was just like, okay, I guess we need a boss for reasons.
Yeah. And you didn't need a boss, especially since the scene right after that is climactic in its own way. And that's getting into spoiler territory. But yeah. So I guess, again, like, if you want a fun game. Like, it's definitely fun. It's a fun Dragon Quest game. And one question I want to ask you, though, like, taking the story aside, because we're going to talk plenty about the story. Yeah. Gameplay-wise, do you think that this is a good first Dragon Quest game? Because personally, like, although I think it would be an okay first Dragon Quest game for a lot of people in terms of gameplay, I still think that 4 would probably be a better first Dragon Quest game, just in terms of the gameplay and the dungeon progression and things like that.
I think this would be a good first Dragon Quest game for someone who has played Final Fantasy games before, because I think this is the closest to Final Fantasy that a Dragon Quest game has ever gotten. Like, thinking about the sort of added mechanic of tension, while I'm not familiar with a lot of the later Final Fantasy games, like, in terms of gameplay, so I don't know if there's anything similar to tension in those games, but just the idea...
I couldn't tell you either.
But just the idea that you have some sort of, like, super attacks, and that you have a bunch of skills, and that you have these skill trees, I feel like if someone has played Final Fantasy games, the variety that is in this game might be more appealing to them as an entryway into the Dragon Quest series versus a game like DQ4, which I love the simplicity of DQ4, but I could see how, especially early game where you're just like, all Ragnar does is attack, what the crap, like that would be a turnoff.
I think I get where you're coming from. Personally, though, I feel like it's a much, like, it might give you, if you play Dragon Quest VIII, it might give you a weird impression about what the rest of the series is going to be like, though, because, like, even as far as I can tell, like, even 9 is immediately tries to go back to stuff that's more classic in nature, so they immediately turn away from the more cinematic style that they went for with 8, and maybe 11 will be more like 8 in terms of pacing and gameplay, but, like, that's why I think, like, maybe, like, 4 or 5 is a little bit of a better, because it gives you more of an idea of, okay, Dragon Quest is going to play like this. It doesn't feel like it's trying to be, I don't know. Just depends. Do you get what I'm talking about?
It depends ultimately on the person who wants to, if a person wants to experience Dragon Quest, do you want to ease into a Dragon Quest experience with something like 8, or do you want to get sort of a more traditional Dragon Quest experience? And that's completely up to the individual. In my case, I wanted to start with 4 because you told me that was a good starting point, and I was prepared to, like, start with a game, even though you warned me, You're going to have to grind at the beginning of each chapter. The first chapter is kind of like boring because you're just one dude. You can't do anything but hit attack pretty much. So, you know.
Hey, you get herbs and a cute heal slime.
That is true.
But obviously, we all know that the best Dragon Quest game to start with is Dragon Quest II, right?
Absolutely. I thought you were gonna go like super obscure and say something like one of the Mystery Dungeon games.
No, actually, honestly, if I wanted to get like a young kid like 7 years old into Dragon Quest, I'd probably show them Dragon Quest Rocket Slime, because that game, I've looked up that game recently and it's adorable.
Like a strategy
and, like,
game
that's
though? I don't even.
No, it's like okay. So
maybe we should talk about this later. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah. Okay.
Dragon Quest Rocket Slime discussion coming to you in 20.
Okay, but anyway,
so the other thing I guess we should discuss that we kind of somewhat is like the presentation of the game. This is definitely in the PS2 version. If you, again, I'm going to mention Final Fantasy X. This doesn't look like Final Fantasy X. This is somewhere in between like the PS1 Final Fantasies and PS2 Final Fantasies. But I think it works because they went with like a cel-shaded style that really complements Akira Toriyama's artwork.
Yeah.
So that looks pretty good. Everything looks pretty clean on the PS2 version. The 3DS version changed some things. Everyone looks worse, but they also made things brighter. Like just in terms of polygons, everyone looks worse.
The textures are more low res, lower poly. You have to make some sacrifices to get it running on the hardware. For just a minor side note, the game, if you're playing on the 3DS, does not allow you to turn it on into 3D. And games that do that, like Hyrule Warriors Legends, if you're running on an old 3DS, Pokemon Sun and Moon, when they don't even let you turn the 3D on, that basically means we are running this thing as hard as we possibly can, and we're just barely getting it on. So, I mean, granted, missing the 3D wasn't really what bothered me. I mean, granted, I think the game still looks fine on the 3DS. Yeah. Like, everything's still, nothing's, like, I mean, if you get really close to some of the textures aren't great, but the models still look okay.
The models look okay. What bothered me was just that, like, as I kind of alluded to before, the game went for a very cinematic style, like that, you go into a cutscene and the camera will frame a certain character and you'll see a character's face. Like the one I always think of is the bar scene where you meet Angelo, how the camera pans in and you see Angelo and you see Yangus and 8 standing behind Angelo, and Angelo like puts his hand up and doesn't even look at them, And a little bit of that cinematic feeling is kind of lost when the models, their faces aren't quite as expressive and it doesn't look as good graphically. I mean, it still worked. I still got the experience, but I wouldn't again, if someone's made, I think people have already made that Dragon Quest VIII the movie on YouTube. I don't see anyone wanting to do that with the 3DS version anytime soon.
Yeah, and I mean, granted, that's to be expected when you're paring it down to a handheld like that. Like, I'm sure, like, the Switch or the Vita could run Dragon Quest VIII pretty much exactly as it was on the PS2, and without really any compromises. But the 3D, unfortunately, I really can't see a world where they release Dragon Quest VIII Remake on maybe the Switch if that ends up being popular, but like on the Vita though, because really there are two audiences for Dragon Quest in Japan, I should state. We're kind of the rest of the world's a side thought when it comes to this series for them. But for Dragon Quest, there's really two audiences that Japan is thinking about. There's the otaku, and then there's the everyone else. The otaku are going to buy Dragon Quest no matter where it's on because they love the series. So they're more thinking about where can we get this game for everybody else, because because normal people play Dragon Quest. Like, there's a noticed drop in productivity in Japan every time a new game comes out, and I was going to say unfortunately, but it's not really unfortunate. It's just kind of how it is. The 3DS is the game system that a normal person in Japan is most likely to own. So really, there was no real choice to where they could release it. It basically had to be on the 3DS.
It's kind of disappointing to me. Just like, I would have loved to see what they could do if they gave this game like a real nice HD remaster for like even something, if they did something like they've done with games like Builders and Heroes, where they release it on the PS3, PS4, and Vita. But I understand, like, at the same time, I do really appreciate having a handheld version of DQ8, because now, like, you can play DQ4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 on the 3DS.
And 9.
Oh, yeah, I forgot.
And if you're in Japan, 10. There's a Dragon Quest X on, so, and I'm wondering if any of the 1, 2, or 3 DQ games are downloadable on the 3DS, because that would be sick if, like, a Japanese kid could have the entire main series on one handheld. That would be awesome.
Mr. ExandShadow, I have Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3 SNES edition on my 3DS, thanks to the...
Because you're a criminal! You're a criminal! Tsujiyama-san's gonna throw you into Dragon Quest jail.
No. Thank you, Tsujiyama-sama. Oh, can we talk about the voice acting?
Oh, okay. We can talk about the voice acting next. It's okay.
It's voice acting. Some of it sounds compressed. Yangus is the best voice. Yangus's voice actor is undoubtedly the best voice actor. I like Jessica's
Ricky
new
Glover,
actress.
you do great work.
What was that?
Oh, I was just saying that Ricky Glover is the name of Yangus's actor.
Yeah.
He does great work. I've listened to some comparisons. I actually like Jessica's new voice more too.
Jessica's new voice to me sounds younger. Like, it sounds more like a 17-year-old. Her old voice sounded quite a bit like it sounded like a voice of an older woman. Like, not old, but older than 17. The other voice actors I thought that were really good are Marcello, who just steals every scene he's in pretty much. Trode,
I think, other than Yangus, he's the best voice.
And he and Yangus play a very different sort of character. Trode does a very good job, actually, too. Like, he's comedic, but there are times where Trode is more serious, and I actually thought his voice actor did a really good job. And then Medea. Yeah,
he's one of the better... Him and Medea, I think, are both great. Like, Trode, he talks in this kind of voice, which is... He's supposed to be, like, really prissy and irritating, but, like, when he does act serious, like, it's... Like, he still has that kind of voice like this,
what
you know? But it's still...
What the devil do you think you're doing? That's my favorite Trode line.
God blimey, Granddad. But Medea, I warmed up to, I think, is the big thing. Because at first you think she talks like, oh, I'm the stereotypical princess. And we'll talk more about Medea's character more on. But the actress, I think, added a lot of those layers of depth to the character that you might not have seen otherwise. So I think Medea did a good job. Mori, I think his voice acting is perfect for the kind of character that he's supposed to be.
I actually liked quite a bit, although she didn't get very much dialogue. Angela, to me, was the most disappointing.
Yeah, like, here's the thing. Most of the main voice actors are range from fine to pretty good. Like, Jessica's new voice actress does a good enough job, but I don't think it's as good as, like, Heroes. I think Jessica's voice is very good in Heroes. It's just pretty good in DQ8 3DS. I don't like Angelo's voice at all. I don't think it... Like, I know nothing will beat our Angelo voice from Fortune Street. Like, I mean, but it doesn't come across... Like, something about he talks very slowly and with a very low voice. And that's not... it doesn't fit for me.
And I think part of it... So, like, I'm not really, like, an super acting person, but I had to take an arts class in undergrad, and I took an intro to acting class. And one thing we talked about is in acting, like both stage acting and, obviously it translates to voice acting as well, it is very hard to effectively convey a character who is supposed to be sort of like calm or detached or like aloof, because it very easily can just come across as the actor is bored or doesn't give a care. And I think Angelo's actor / whoever was directing Angelo's actor kind of fell into that trap where I think they were trying to make him sound aloof or like, just kind of disinterested, like, because, he's like, he tries to play it cool, but it often just came across as, I'm reading these lines, like, please help the abbot, and I'm like, say it like you mean it, Angelo.
We should stress that none of the main characters, none of the voice acting in this game, I would say, is bad. Like, nothing's like Baten Kaitos
some of the
or
NPCs
anything like
were
that.
a little cringeworthy. Like the one I always think of is the guy in the bar fight scene who's like, "You little rat, you must be cheating."
Yeah, like I was gonna say that the worst people in the worst voice acting in the game is easily the NPCs. A lot of them are pretty not great, but even the worst voice acting in this game, I would say, is decent compared to a lot of the voice acting that came out around the time. You know, for 2004, this I could see why this is considered like fantastic. For games today where the voice acting has gotten a fair bit better, I would say it's pretty average to okay in a lot of cases.
So I would say Yangus, Marcello, MVPs. Angelo most needs improvement. But you know, again, like it's hard to play a character like Angelo and do it effectively. And I think part of that, which we'll get to more as we talk about the story, is that the story ended up that all of Angelo's sort of funny moments and like snide moments were in the party chat, which isn't voice acted. So.
And at the beginning of the game, too. Like, the first cutscene with Angelo, fantastic. We'll talk about that more later.
But even then, I felt like his actor could have hammed it up more. Like, the part where he's being flirty with Jessica, like, that's not a flirty voice. You know, the part where he's like, I hope my little jape didn't hurt you. He sounds a little more reserved. Like, I would expect something more like, you know, I hope my little jape didn't hurt you. Like,
more like that.
Yeah, like... Hello, ladies.
Yeah, you need to play it up a little bit. Like, he doesn't have to become Johnny Bravo or anything like that, but, like, you know what? Ring a Bell. I don't think that Angelo should sound entirely like Ring a Bell from Bravely Default, but whenever he's being more flirty or, you know, he wants to get his dick wet, he should channel a little bit of that. You haven't played Bravely Default, so you don't really know what I'm talking about, but...
Yeah. But I know
yeah.
Ring a Bell is like the flashy one.
Oh, Ring a Bell can't keep it in his pants. So yeah. So he's like Angelo, but without any restraint whatsoever, actually. But yeah. So the sound for the voice acting for the time pretty good.
Also, didn't you say that were you about to say how they sound compressed?
Yeah, they do kind of sound compressed. It's was that just a was that just a 3DS thing, or was that something you noticed when you looked up PS2 cutscenes as well?
I don't know, because I couldn't compare like head to head, because like there's been very few 3DS cutscenes. So people have posted like some of the new cutscenes, especially online, but I haven't seen much of a comparison. So I'm not entirely sure whether the compression is just like is worse on the 3DS, but.
And you're gonna have some of it, because like Bravely Default has some compression as well, but other games like any of the Shin Megami Tensei games on 3DS, those have like virtually no compression, and all the voices sound very clean in those games. And in Bravely Default's case, the entire game is dual audio, so like it makes a little bit more sense. Whereas in Dragon Quest VIII, there's really not that much voice acting, and there's only one language available, so. It's a little bit, I mean, granted, it's not like it sounds like, oh, so you can really understand everything we're talking about. It's audible, and it's fine, but it's noticeable enough to the point where we felt like we needed to bring it up. So, but when it comes to the sound, though, and especially in the 3DS version, I think there's one thing both you and I agree on that we hate, and that we're probably gonna spend a long time talking about, and that's the music. The compositions are pretty good.
I like the music a lot. Like, I mean, some of the tracks definitely stick with me. Like, I really, the overworld theme is super, like, soothing, you know?
It's a very good overworld theme.
And yes. I love, one of my favorite tracks is I believe the name of the track is A Cathedral Town, the one that plays in Sevilla.
That's the
No. A Cathedral Town is the one that's like, oh,
that one.
The one with
yes.
the trumpets.
Okay.
And there were a bunch of really like the theme that plays in the Dark Ruins was really and in the I believe that's also what plays in Phase 1 of Dhoulmagus, right? Like that was super creepy.
The boss theme's good, and also who doesn't love that bar theme?
Oh yeah.
So we like the music. Here's the thing. In the PS2 version, the game got a beautiful orchestrated soundtrack. It is phenomenal. And I wish that every video game had a soundtrack. Like, again, not orchestra music doesn't fit for every game, but I wish that every game had that much attention put into its sound quality and everything sounded as nice and the production was that good for every game. The 3DS version, specifically for the Western release, we get MIDIs.
Yep.
We get none of that beautiful orchestrated music. We get MIDI files. And this is the same issue that we had with Dragon Quest VII, where the MIDIs just aren't as good. Not even close. Like, not that they're terrible, but when you listen to the orchestrated, you can't go back.
I made the mistake of listening to it on YouTube, and I was just like, what the crap? Like, oh, shoot. Censor that. Final boss music is amazing. The flight soundtrack is gorgeous. Oh my gosh, those trumpets. Like, it's so good.
Synthesized trumpets just don't sound very good. It can't get them to sound very good a lot of the time. It's very frustrating because Suji Amisan in his glory and wisdom just doesn't want us to have nice things.
I think this is even really worse than DQ7. Like, DQ7, they just didn't give it to us. We had the orchestrated soundtrack for the PS2 version. They took it away from us.
Yeah.
We didn't deserve it.
So, nope, we were ungrateful. We were ungrateful.
You Americans bought this game for Final Fantasy XII demo. You don't deserve orchestral music for 3DS remake.
Yeah, it's actually, like, I know we're backtracking a bit, but I love how many people bought this game specifically for the Final Fantasy demo, and then everybody ends up, like, Final Fantasy XII is one of the least acclaimed games in the series, and Dragon Quest VIII is the most acclaimed Dragon Quest game in the West. So, yeah, funny how those kinds of things turn out, right?
I know, right?
So, yeah. So, we like the music. I would not say this is anywhere close to being my favorite Dragon Quest soundtrack. That's still 4. I think 3 is probably right behind that. But it's still very, very good.
But the flight music is from 3. Didn't you notice that, Ted? Oh, wait, you didn't.
Okay, I'm gonna be kicking Qatherine from the discussion now.
This is now Ted talks about DQ8 with a lot less discussion of two very hot brothers.
So anyway, to give our non-spoiler, it's so frustrating because a lot of why I want to talk about this game is due to the story.
Well,
it's definitely a game worth playing. I'll put it that way. But it's a lot of fun for sure. But the story, a lot of the nitty-gritty of what I think has to do with the story, which I don't want to spoil. But you can't go wrong with this, but I still think that if you haven't played any Dragon Quest games up to this point, I would still recommend 4 or 5 first over this one. If you've already played Dragon Quest before, then go right ahead. Why haven't you played 8 yet? I'm actually kind of wondering about that because that seems to be almost everyone's favorite over here. But yeah, what about if you can wrap up your thoughts quickly without spoilers? What did you think?
I think Dragon Quest VIII did a great job in making a really big leap for the series. Again, this game came out, it was after the original version of Dragon Quest VII, which was a PS1 game with sprites. The entire game was basically sprites.
It was like a 2000 game that looked like it should have been a 95 PS1 game.
So I think in that regard, and the fact that this game did manage to go, not only did it go full 3D, not only did it add voice acting, it really went for a more cinematic story with proper theming, and it tried to have character development, and really well-directed cutscenes. The biggest problem I have, and I really do like the gameplay system. It's quintessential Dragon Quest with some great additions. The overworld, being able to explore the overworld in 3D is a lot of fun. The big misstep, I agree with Ted, is certain aspects of the story felt like there was just big room for improvement, and it kind of took away from the overall narrative. But really that's that's super spoiler territory. But I think the good outweighs the bad for me. That I can enjoy the game.
Sure. Oh, I don't want anybody. I should mention this right at the start, because people will forget, even if you say that you like a game, if you mention that you don't like certain parts about it, they will forget that you said you liked the game, and they will think you hate the game. But I thought this was a great game. I had a lot of fun. I just think it has some issues. In some cases, some rather big issues. And I guess we should put up our big spoiler tag right now, so that we can start talking about those issues without having to dance around.
Spoiler draws near. Command.
Flee!
Psych
Run,
up! Psych
flee.
up!
This
Psych
is
up!
your chance. Okay, so let's start off with actually what I think is let's start at the beginning, which is a very good place to start. Sound of Music reference was intentional, yes. But actually, in terms of the story, I think that the first 20 hours are actually the strongest in the entire game. I think that the game builds itself up, the world, everything. I think this game has a very, very strong introduction. Would you agree or disagree?
I would say the game, the story felt really good. Actually, I would say the point at which I started to, feel like the story got weaker, stepping away from the fact that there were, weird things we had to do to accomplish other things, I would say up until the fight with Dhoulmagus.
Yeah, the first half of the game, I think, is stronger than the second half.
The fight with Dhoulmagus, to me, was the point at which the plot started to kind of meander. And the fact, and especially the fact that we had kind of a Chekhov's gun situation with a certain character who at the 85% mark suddenly became incredibly pivotal when he'd been sitting on his hands for most of the game.
30 hours at least, depending on how slow you are.
I'll be frank right now, that is my biggest issue with the story.
Oh yeah, and we'll get to it. Hopefully we'll get to it. We're an hour in already. But anyway, let's start at the very beginning. I love how they start the game within. I know that they were just being spiteful to the people who whined about Dragon Quest VII's opening, where within 3 seconds you fight slimes and it has nothing to do with anything. But they were like, "Here, fine, you gotta battle, okay? Jeez, you gotta fight something in the first hour. You happy?" Because other than that first fight, the beginning is very slow. You're just exploring the town of Fairbury is the first name of the first town, right?
Well, I thought it had a really strong opening character-wise because we meet Yangus. We immediately understand that Yangus and the Gov, as he calls him, are friends, and we very quickly meet Trode, who is kind of bossy and seems to be bickering with Yangus all the time. But one of the really strong moments for me is you get into this town, and Trode is I think they pretty quickly tell the player that Trode was the king of Trodain and was cursed into this weird little toad troll form. And his daughter Medea was turned into a horse, a really pretty horse, by the way. Everyone feels the need to mention this.
I when I say it's slow, I don't mean to say that it's not interesting, because I found the opening very interesting. Not only are you introduced to the information about the party members, but there's this whole murder mystery going on with the house that burned down with Master Rylus inside, and there's a very kind of eerie atmosphere about the whole thing. You're hearing things about Dhoulmagus. You don't really know who this guy is at that point. It's all very interesting. And then also, I really like the story at the beginning with Calderasha and his daughter as well. That was very sad and sweet.
I would just like to point out the thing, I made a note of this, that. So initially Trode, Medea, Yangus, and 8 go into the town of Fairbury. And you and Yangus go looking around, and then you hear a commotion, and you go back, and you see that the villagers have noticed Trode, and they think he's a monster, and they start throwing rocks at him. And,
that seems rough.
Medea steps in front of him, and that.
Oh yeah, that was super cool.
That was really sweet to me, and I think that was the point at which you realized, okay, Medea isn't just a plot device, so you have a wagon from the beginning. Medea's a character, and while it took a while for her to fully develop as a character, that was really cool to me.
Nah, it's also, I think that's also supposed to be the point where you actually start to believe what Troda's saying, because at that point, like, at the point in the story, even Yangus thinks that, like, Troda's just, like, some lunatic, and, like, he doesn't really know why, the hero is following him around, but at that point, you, like, when Medea, like, steps in front and there's, like, this, like, she's doing it on purpose, like, you're thinking, oh, maybe she actually is. Like, I mean, obviously, you know he's a cursed king because the front of the box is Journey of the Cursed King.
I would like to point, but by the way, fun fact, the name of this game in Japanese is, the subtitle is The Sky, the Sea, and the Land and the Cursed Princess. So in Japanese, they felt it was important to mention, what I think is funny is, I won't spoil why in case people haven't played the post-game, but the Journey of the Cursed King actually could refer to more than one person.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh, fancy.
Chew on that.
Ooh. No, it's a metaphorical concept. I can't chew on it.
You're not trying hard enough. Anyways, so Trode, that was kind of like a heartwarming moment, right off the bat. So yeah, the thing with Calderasha was really, I didn't understand it at first. I remember you had to explain it to me.
Yeah, like the backstory with Calderasha was really sad. I also, the first dungeon I think was also a pretty good first dungeon. Yeah. Like, it was not very complicated. It was basically like just a forked path. One path had treasure, one path had not treasure. You actually had to go that way, but like, it was simple enough. It was fun to explore as well, and the boss was actually pretty funny too. Like, you find out that the reason why the boss has the crystal ball is that, like, Calderasha threw it away, and it landed on his head, and that's why the boss is grumpy and attacks
people. And the boss also just,
he
screws up his words all the time.
Because he has brain damage, which, in retrospect, shouldn't be funny, but it is, because it's a cartoon. Exactly. We forgot to... Well, we'll talk about... I was going to talk about, like, exploring the overworld, but we can talk about more after we leave Fairbury. But yeah, like, the backstory for Calderasha is really sad, where he, like, didn't care who he was a fortune teller. He didn't care who he told fortunes for as long as he got paid. And he felt guilt when he realized that one of his fortunes led to his adopted daughter's biological parents getting killed. And out of guilt, he quit fortune telling and took care of the daughter instead, and also became a drunk. So, you know, one of these things is not like the other. But it's such a sweet way to start the thing, and it also kind of lets you know that you're not just about, like, helping the king. You actually want to help people too. You're not just about, like, it's not really a self-centered journey, which I always appreciate, because I like being a good person in these types of games. It kind of bothers me when your characters act very self-focused when things are very selfish, because it kind of goes against what I like to do in these kinds of games, you know?
What the devil do you think you're doing? You are my man, Exand! You are supposed to serve me! And the princess! Trode. Never change.
Trode. You so silly. Yeah, so, actually, we don't find out a lot in the first town. Like, you learn very little about Dhoulmagus.
No, you find out that you find out from Calderasha that Dhoulmagus was the one who burned down a magician named Master Rylus' house, and I think, Trode knows that Rylus was Dhoulmagus' teacher, but now Rylus is dead and his house was burned down. You find out, Dhoulmagus left and went through a checkpoint that, you weren't able to go through that checkpoint before. Well, now there's a giant Dhoulmagus-shaped hole in the checkpoint, and you can go through it now. How wonderful.
Yeah. So I think now, I guess, is a good chance to talk about the exploration. I really liked wandering around the overworld in this game. I thought it was a lot of fun. I think it felt a lot like a true evolution of what exploring the overworld must have felt like for people who played, like, the original Dragon Quest, where you weren't given much direction. Well, I mean, you're given direction, you know exactly where you want to go, but there's stuff to find no matter where you search. There's treasure chests all over the place. I liked wandering around the overworld a lot. The camera control wasn't great, but everything else, I think, was a good time. I
think my issues with it, well, first of all, it's one of those things that I think suffers a lot from the graphical downgrade, because it doesn't look as impressive, like, on 3DS.
It doesn't, but at least you're not, but again, like, with the graphical downgrade, you also get the fact that you don't have to fight encounters if you don't want to.
Well, that's
they're very easy to
Ted, that's a separate thing. Like, you could have, there's no reason, the two are not mutually exclusive.
I'm just, well, I feel like it's important to bring up because it's part of the experience. Like, you can get the more graphically impressive experience on PS2 where you can see the scope of the overworld a lot better and it doesn't look as blocky in a lot of places, but in terms of, like, the feeling of exploring, I feel like that's also, like, that's more effective on 3DS, where you can explore at your leisure. You're not forced to run into a fight every 20 to 30 seconds. You can avoid fights very easily, and it makes looking for specific treasure chests or seeing, oh, what's around that corner, what's up that mountain. It makes that a lot more free-form and fluid. Does that make sense? So you to get the fluidity, you lose the fidelity. To get the fidelity, you lose the
But that's more a
fluidity.
consequence of the platform they chose to remake it on, is what I'm essentially saying. Like, it's not like, if they
could have done it on the
decided
PS2,
to make an
you're right.
HD version that had the on-field encounters, it'd be the best of both, but we aren't here to discuss what could have been. The only other thing I really had issue with, like, I liked the map on the bottom screen, but it was way too zoomed out, even at the zoomed in. And I didn't like how sometimes I couldn't tell on the field, like, even looking at the top screen, where you can actually see the world. I was like, oh, I can jump down here, right? No.
That was my biggest issue.
No, I can't.
You can't jump down.
I don't understand why.
Because sometimes you can't.
And then
sometimes you can jump off of ledges, and sometimes you can't.
And it was very unclear to me what determined it. So that was just frustrating. And yeah, with the fact that the map was so zoomed out, sometimes I couldn't tell which way to go to get to a thing. Like, I'd be like, oh, I can climb up here, right? Oh no, there's a ledge in the way. I have to go all the way around.
I kind of there's part of that I liked, in that the environment didn't feel constructed. It felt freeform, in that in the real world, in the real wilderness, there aren't always clear and convenient paths to go on, and sometimes you do have to take the long way around to get to someplace. I like that instance, but maybe for, like, and that obviously works in a game like, say, Zelda Breath of the Wild, where it's the whole point. Maybe in an RPG where like the overworld is a little bit more about just getting from place to place, some more convenient ways up specific places would be a little bit more. I
can say, just from the demo of DQ Heroes 2, I like the way DQ Heroes 2, like, the mini-map on that, it's easier to see, like, okay, if I want to get here, I go this way. It's not as organic looking of a map. It's a very, like, this is a map. Here's where you are. Whereas the map in 8, like, actually looks like a map that you would find in a book. By the way, you didn't get the world map at the start in the PS2 version.
Oh, I can imagine you getting lost.
You only get it, yeah. Well, there's a compass. There's a little compass. I've seen gameplay footage where there's a little compass in the corner, so you can try to remember, like, okay, I came from that direction. But the world map, which I think it's just, I don't know if it's just the world map or, like, if you get the zoomed in view, you get as a sorry I almost tortured you gif from Marcello.
Ooh, that's like 15 hours into the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, and also one thing about the PS2 version is that you had to find maps for each of the dungeons as well. So, yeah. So, like, I mean, obviously when you're playing on the DS, it's almost like kind of expected that you get a map on the top or bottom screen, at this point. So,
like, screw it, we don't know what else to do with it. Put a map on it.
Hey, I appreciate it. I love having the map on the bottom screen. Yeah, so I'm not your fam. I'm not related to you.
Anyways,
Anyway, so you adventure. Oh, I should mention that we didn't really talk about this at all when we were talking about the gameplay stuff, but I love the monsters in DQ8 as always. There weren't a lot of new ones, but the new ones that they did add I liked a lot. Like, my favorite's the puppet.
The puppet guys. Dudes were the best. They have their little puppets and they tell you, like, they make you laugh. And one thing that was funny was I ran into one of them, the puppet master, and he told he would tell a love story, And like you would get different reactions from the different party members. Like I think 8 and Yangus would like laugh, or sometimes like it would just say like so and so didn't get it. And Angelo always seemed to fall asleep, which I thought was in character.
Yeah, I also love how like when certain characters do sex appeal moves, Jessica will never fall for them.
No, what it is there's certain enemies that can use a puff puff, but if they try to use the puff puff on Jessica, and I've heard this also applies to Red, it says, but Jessica laughed triumphantly, having won the Battle of the Bulge.
But then that ruins my chance for hot lesbian stories with those characters. Man, lame. But yeah, there aren't a lot of new monsters in this game, but they brought back a lot of really, really good ones. I think like saber cats, the good amount of slimes.
Oh, you forgot about the calamari kid, your favorite.
Oh, the calamari kid's adorable. I don't know if he's new technically though.
I thought he was, but I might be wrong.
He might be. I think he might be new. I know the jail cats are new for this game. They brought back a certain squid design. The big squids I know are brought back from DQ3. Yeah, but I think that there's a good amount of monster variety. They're not recycling enemies too often. Although, granted, I think Dragon Quest does monsters and monster variety better than almost any other RPG series, honestly. But that's a different discussion altogether. Monsters are cute in this game. We'll just leave it at that. Yes. But anyway, yeah. So eventually you make your way to Alexandria, which is really where you start, where the plot really starts to kind of snowball a little bit, because that's where you meet Jessica, who is your...
Well, no, you don't meet Jessica there.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah, you're right. Well, you kind of hear about her
but then you get your first
You hear that she's a bratty bitch
where you
from a lot of
find out,
people.
like, oh, Jessica, and then, like, her brother died, and her mom's, like, super sad because Jessica's brother died. Jessica's brother, Alistair.
A lot of people in the town don't like Jessica very much, too. Like, the waitstaff in the manor hate her.
Yeah.
Like, they say she's, like, a bratty bitch and all of that, which
and
I wish they elaborated on a little bit more, actually. But we'll get
and then
to
there's
that.
these two kiddos, Bangers and Mash. I don't know who named their kids that, but that's fine. And they're like, we're guarding Jessica's room, and you can't come in. And so the hero, being the hero that he is, sends his pet mouse Munchie, who we haven't mentioned yet.
He's adorable.
Munchie's absolutely adorable. And we didn't mention the fact that if you feed Munchie cheese in battle, he can use different breath attacks for some reason.
Yeah. It's a feature that I wish... if cheese wasn't so hard to make and the ingredients weren't so rare, and also your inventory space in battle wasn't so limited, it would be something that I think would be really cool. Like, if you could have, like, 8 cheeses and also other things on you, and also the cheeses only work when they're in the hero's inventory, and only the hero can activate the cheese, which is annoying. So it could have been really cool, but unfortunately it's less useful than it should have been. I guess is the best way to put
definitely.
it.
And because the fact that they're consumable, like if it had meant, like, one of the cheeses you can get, for example, basically casts Insulatl. Like if I could just have a cheese in 8's inventory and then 8 suddenly could cast Insulatl, like, that would be boss. But no, you
yeah, like taking up an well, that could also get very, very broken, like with the healing cheeses and
that's true. And with, like, if you could just scorch every turn.
Yeah.
But anyways,
well, maybe if they made them harder to get, then it would be worth it. Like, you take up an inventory slot, but you get this specific move. Like, if you had to earn it, we could make it work, I think.
But oh well. So yeah, you get to control Munchie and go into Jessica's room and find out that Jessica's very much not there. So we have to go find her for reasons.
Which means we get to, which means we have to go up everybody's favorite dungeon, Alexandria Tower. Yay! It's an okay dungeon. We have a reason to complain about it.
Yeah.
Though.
So you get up there,
which we will get to.
Get up there, and Jessica tries to shoot a fireball in your face.
Rude. Rude.
She's like, "Oh, you killed my brother. I'm going to harm you." And then I think we get our first core blimey. Cole Blimey, Granddad.
Yeah, because the statue suddenly talks, and turns out that we didn't kill his brother. No shit. Her brother, I should say. And, Jessica is very upset that her brother is dead. Very, very
Jessica
upset.
really cared a lot about her brother.
A lot. They were very close. They make sure to mention
They
this.
mention it repeatedly, and how much Jessica loves Alistair.
She loved her brother quite a lot. He meant very much to her. It was very...
Absolutely disgusting.
Yeah. So I will say I did like Jessica a lot in these opening scenes. Like, I liked how I liked her quick temper. I liked that she was quick to just throw a spell at you without thinking. That's something that gets brought up in things like Heroes and, like, once later in the game, and they don't bring it up again. Like, I thought that not only would it have a lot of comedic potential, but it could also be used in a lot of interesting ways in storytelling. Like, maybe instead of, like, it could cause a conflict at certain points. Like, you go into a town, like, Jessica gets like, hit on by someone, and then, like, she throws a frizzle at somebody important by accident or whatever. Like, that could have been cool, I think, as well. It's just underdeveloped, unfortunately. But we'll get to that more when we're talking about later in the game. But I did like the stuff in Alexandria, though. I thought it was cool.
And then Jessica gets, like, really pissy with her mom and puts on a sexy dress and leaves.
Yeah, basically.
And her mom's like, I disown you. And Jessica's like, whatever, Mom. I'm gonna go get hit on by a bunch of sailors. So you find out in the tower that Dhoulmagus killed Alistair for reasons that are unclear at the time. It looks like he just kind of hugs him to death, actually. But he's stabbing him.
Yeah, at this point, you don't know why Dhoulmagus is killing people, but you know that he's not killing people randomly. No. Is the big thing, which you're kind of wondering, like, okay, if he's just like your typical chaotic evil asshole, he would be killing everyone in town, but he's very calculated, and that's part of what makes him so mysterious and threatening, I think, at that point.
You don't know who he's going to strike next. You don't know where he's going. You just know that he's one step ahead of you and that he's killing people. And that he probably holds the key to turning Trodain and Troda Medea back to normal. So, so you follow... Jessica leaves, and you follow her to Port Prospect and beat up Monster and get to the next continent. And Jessica decides to join your party.
But that's also where you learn a lot about Yangus too, on
the boat. You find out how Yangus and the Gov met.
And that, I think, is great because, again, Yangus is probably our favorite character, at least our favorite party member in the entire game. He is such a great personality. Like, for one thing, he is funny. He has a lot of hilarious lines throughout. He's constantly a joy to listen to. I always love listening to his party chat. And also, he doesn't fall into any specific stereotype. Like, I mean, the tough guy with the soft heart has been done before, but he doesn't quite fit into that mold either, because he does come across as a rugged guy who is trying to, like, improve himself. Yeah. Like, he's not like he hasn't always been a softie. He's, like, working on it. He's trying to be a better person.
Yes. Which I think that kind of is, like, the cute part about the fact that one of his skill sets is humanity. Like, that Yangus is actually becoming a kinder-hearted person throughout your journey, like, both in terms of his personality and terms of battle. You know? Yeah,
true. That is actually really cool, yeah. And also, I love the story about how Yangus and the hero met, because it establishes the hero's personality as well, where, like, the hero saves Yangus from falling down off the bridge, even though Yangus at that point was being abandoned and was trying to rob them blind, basically. So I love how they characterize the hero in this game as well. We didn't really talk about him much either, but I think that this game has one of the better heroes in the series. It's very expressive. There's a lot of, like, Wind Waker styled expressions going on, so that you know, like, exactly what he's thinking, or, as you might realize in most of the case, not thinking. He's very goofy and, like, duh?
Yeah, there's a lot of, like, derpy open mouth expressions from 8. But it's super cute. Yeah. It's super funny.
I think that the best scene, like, one of the best scenes is the bar scene when he's just standing there and, like, he's like, what the hell did I get into?
I should probably do something, but I don't know what.
Munchie wants some cheese?
Pretty much.
Here you go.
So yeah, eight's great. So you find out, like, 8 saved Yangus. And
Trode was really pissy about saving Yangus, though, for the record.
I love, one of my favorite is when Yangus is like, "You're the bee's knees, Gov." And I was like, yeah.
I also loved how, like, Yangus, like, is like, "You saved me, Gov, I'm gonna follow you to the day I die," and then Trode's like, "Oh, well, he listens to me, so you're under my command now," and then Yangus is like, "What? No, I ain't, Granddad, I listen to Gov, not you."
He was the one who saved me, not you. And then just like speeds up and they're bickering.
Oh yeah, this game is the comedy, especially in the first half, is on point, I think.
It is. You can't. I forget what they say if you slow it down, but apparently they do. The actors are actually saying something if you slow down the sped up.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
that's really funny.
While we keep talking, I'm gonna try to figure out what it was.
Okay.
But yes.
Are you just gonna start a new playthrough and get to that?
Oh yeah,
point,
exactly. No,
style?
I'm gonna look up the cutscene.
But yeah, I think again, like the ship scene in general, I think is really, really good. Like, you actually kind of find out on the ship scene on the ship that the scene where Yangus and the hero meet is probably like maybe like 5 hours before the beginning of the game.
Okay.
Too.
Oh my god. Okay, apparently according to someone, that the clip that is played in reverse and fast forwarded is "Are you thirsty? Are you thirsty? Are you the king?" Oh, I forgot that Yangus also tells Trode to put a sock in it.
Yeah, so I think the dynamic, especially between Trode, Yangus, and the hero, is very, very
Oh, it's
good.
great.
I think those are probably the most well-developed relationships between speaking characters, I should say, in the entire game. There's a lot of development for relationships with the hero, but obviously the hero is very one-sided.
Yes, yeah.
So, yeah. But you get Jessica at that point, and I should say that before Jessica joined your party, I found her very intriguing, because she did come across as kind of the brat that people were complaining about in Alexandria, but she did seem very determined, and like I was interested in seeing like, okay, she's gonna avenge her brother, and so on and so forth, and you also just to see that she's not like BSing, she is actually willing to do all these things to join it's not like she isn't like playing, she's actually serious.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as soon as she joins the party, it feels like almost all of that disappears, ice style.
Yeah. A lot of the fire in her seemed to sort of die down once she joined the party. She wasn't nearly as sharp or as cutting. I felt like occasionally she made like sharp remarks. Like I remember once I was like backtracking to do something, and she was like, "Do you know where you're going, 8?" And I was like, "Yeah," and she was like, "Well, get to it then." And then when I was no, she was like, "Some leader you are."
Yeah, but there's not really any of that. Like there's like occasionally, like once every blue moon, you get a party chat about it. But really, other than that, like, and the party chat as usual is completely missable. It feels like any amount of most of her charm or character just disappeared. I found her incredibly bland and the least interesting character in the party by far.
Of the main the main three, I should say.
The main honestly, I still like, I know you and I are probably going to disagree about this. I find Mori more compelling than Jessica, because at least the stuff he has to say is entertaining. Maybe not deep, but at least it's entertaining, you know? Whereas Jessica, it felt like she either stated the obvious, or what she said could be applied to any other character without really even changing much of anything, you know?
No, I get what you mean.
So, yeah. I believe you agree with me on most of those points as well.
That Jessica's dialogue is pretty boring, yeah. Yeah, I'll agree with that, yeah.
Yeah. I also, it frustrates me because she's clearly the most popular character from the game as well, because we assume the obvious 2 reasons that are pretty prominent, you know. Also, more or less prominent depending on what fan service outfit you have her.
Oh yeah, the fan service outfits that were toned down for the remake.
Yep, gotta keep that A rating
Absolutely.
in Japan.
Zero, you know? Even though, which one was it that they I hated what they did to the bunny suit, just because like they just made it like a two-piece and it looks even dumber.
I think that was actually not a. I don't think that was a like a sexy thing. I think they were worried about Playboy.
That's what I heard. Yeah, that's what I heard. But I don't know if that's actually true.
Yeah, that's the rumor anyway.
So, anyways, we get Jessica, and our next stop is Mahela Abbey, in which
it's just kind of on the way.
It's
like, we're just kind of looking.
I don't know. You could probably just walk by there. But I went in because I figured, okay, I'm gonna go in. I'm gonna explore everywhere. I'm gonna get bullied by the Templar Knights. Aren't Templars like a real life thing from like the Crusades?
The Templar Knights were like extremely zealous Christian things. Yeah. So I'm not my Crusades history isn't completely on point, but they were very zealous and not the nicest of dudes, I think is a relatively accurate and
I'm sure that doesn't mean it. I'm sure they'd be perfectly nice in this game, right? Oh, Marcello! You're gonna kick me out and threaten that I might get my ass kicked if I come back.
It's just like you see Marcello. They start the music changes to the sinister, churchy music from the the church music that's supposed to be soothing, and this is a holy place. Then it starts playing the sinister church music, and Marcello's like, I'm so sorry for how my men have treated you, but you really shouldn't be trespassing here, so I'm gonna forgive it just this once, but from now on, you better not disturb us, okay? It's just like, you're a bad guy. Like, you're obviously a bad guy.
Yeah. He's like, I didn't tell you to be rude. We have a reputation to maintain. Meaning that, it's just a reputation. You actually do bully people. You just don't want people to know it. They're like, I warn you, my men are ill at ease. I may not be able to stop them next time. But he immediately makes an impression. And you're like, well.
He's very striking. And you're like, well, that guy's a douchebag. Yeah. Oh, wait, no, you don't go to Mahela Abbey first. You find Simpleton
No, you
first.
go to Mahela Abbey is between Paragon Quay and Simpleton. There's the river. Okay. The Abbey is like right on top of the river.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Sorry. My bad. So you can kind of just pass through there. I wonder if you can actually miss that cutscene.
I don't know. I feel like there are a lot of cutscenes in this game that might be missable.
And it would make sense, just given that Dragon Quest tends to be much more freeform than something like Final Fantasy, where you have to go from story point to story point. And like if you miss the cutscene, well, too bad, sucks to be you, I suppose. Yeah. There definitely are missable cutscenes in this game.
Absolutely. We'll talk about those.
Like if you decide not to go to Neos or Sevilla early, then you miss those.
In which case you'll be like, thankfully, what happened? Who's this guy?
Who are you? Who is Rollo? I'm confused.
Why is Marcello really angry at him for no reason?
Yeah, so you're not gonna but again, it's nothing major. They don't reveal anything. It's more background details than anything else. But yeah, so they reveal that maybe the church is full of assholes. Wow. Which, is such an original thought for a PlayStation 2 era RPG, Because, there's that, this is, what, the third high-profile game, that anybody can name off the top of their head that has that as a theme. Final Fantasy X, Tales of Symphonia, Dragon Quest VIII, there's probably a lot more. So, I guess it was popular, at the time or something. Yeah. I don't know.
So anyways, you're like, well, we got a warm welcome in the Abbey. Let's keep going. So you get to a lovely little town called Simpleton.
I love the name of that town.
Yeah, well, I think what was the funniest is when Angela says to you, you don't look like simpletons. And it's capitalized you don't look like you're a person from Simpleton.
Yeah, and they bring up that joke quite a number of times. I think it's a Simpleton's Guide to certain places around the world is one of the books. Yeah. But you go to the bar. You go to the bar there, and you have probably what is the funniest scene in the entire game. I think is the bar scene. That was laugh out loud funny. I believe we were together when you saw it for the first time.
It was on your game. We were, and I was. And we watched it.
We were both in stitches when we saw it. It's hilarious. I think that if you haven't played the game yet, I don't want to spoil what happens because it is just too good. But you meet Angelo
Genghis
there,
throws a chair with a guy in it.
Oh man, it is just fantastic.
And then I love how Angela's
meet
just like, Jessica's about to get into. Oh, and the best part to me is at the very end, like Yangus is going out with the two guys, and Charles like, I'll give him the 1-2.
I said let's not spoil it.
It's
You're
too
spoiling
funny.
it.
Anyways, Yangus drags 8 and Jessica out. I don't know why he grabbed 8. Probably because he felt like 8 looked really pathetic.
Yeah, and then you meet Angelo, and again, I think, like, I know I'm jumping the gun a bit, but Angelo was a case where he started off really compelling, and then, like, once he joined your party, a lot of what made him interesting isn't present. They did a better job with Angelo than Jessica, mostly because Angelo's more related to what happens in the plot than Jessica, honestly. Because, like, Jessica really just kind of tags along for a lot of the rest of the game.
Jessica's whole reason for being
Angelo's...
there is, like, I want to avenge my brother. Angelo ends up having a much bigger horse in the race.
Yeah, so... like, Angelo... But, unfortunately, we'll talk more about this as the game progresses, but, like, it's more just a matter of Angelo just doesn't say much of anything that's entertaining or insightful throughout most of the game. It's either a lot of the time he just says when you're party chatting him, like, I don't want to talk right now, shut up, leave me alone. He's rude and mean and kind of an asshole, actually. So I didn't like talking to him very much.
Yeah, but Angelo makes an impression right away when he's like, he basically just starts laying on real thick with Jessica, gives her his Templar's ring.
The opening scene's fantastic with him. I thought, like, oh man, I'm gonna love this guy when I first saw him. And then it was just later on in the game where I was like,
he doesn't actually, that's the thing, is he doesn't do that much womanizing like other, I think part of the problem with this game, and we probably should have talked about this like more in the overview, is the main characters don't do much in cutscenes. They
don't interact with each other a lot either.
Most of the cutscenes involve whoever whoever you ran into talking either to someone else or just addressing the party in general, and your party doesn't say anything, as opposed to, like, I'm going to draw the comparison to Final Fantasy X, where, like, for example, you meet Seymour, and everyone has something to say about Seymour. You go to Seymour's manor, and, you talk to everyone in Seymour's manor, and, in the cutscenes with Seymour, like, it's not just, like, one person's talking. This felt like, like you had a cutscene with, like, for example, like Emma, and nobody actually talks to Emma. Emma just talks at you. So it ends up...
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, I think.
Yeah.
You do get the party chat, so you can see the characters' thoughts about certain things, but that's only really ever addressed to 8.
Yeah.
There's the rare occasion where, like, they'll have a line or two with someone else whenever you party chat, but it's very, very rare. It probably is, like, less than 15 times that I can think of that it might happen.
I remember
throughout the entirety of the game.
And I remember I was so pleasantly shocked in the post game. There's a scene where all 3 of the characters are talking to each other, like, and 8, I was like, why didn't this happen in the main game more often?
I think what the game needed was a lot of Tales of Symphonia styled skits, I think.
Yeah.
Where you can see the characters not just interacting with 8 and hearing what they had to say, but seeing how they interact with each other, because that's one of the big things. Like, the game doesn't have a large cast. That's fine. Like, I'm okay with the game having a small cast as long as the characters are well developed and their relationships are well developed. We don't see a lot of how Yangus and Jessica interact. We don't see a lot of how Yangus and Angelo interact. We get a vague sense of how Angelo and Jessica interact, but it's a very one-dimensional interaction for the most part, where it's just like, oh, Jessica, your boobs are really nice. Oh, shut up, you pervert.
Oh, yeah,
that's all of the dynamic we see, and we don't get anything more deep
Yeah,
than
it's
that,
just
really.
like, and you never, I came out of the game feeling like I couldn't tell if Angelo actually liked Jessica, or if he just, like, was pursuing her because that was what he did. You know what I mean? Like, I think...
Yeah, like, he doesn't like whether Jessica was more than any other woman.
Exactly. And I couldn't tell how Jessica felt about Yangus. And you hear people, I was reading some, like, I was reading on GameFAQs, people discussing, like, the endings, and specifically, like, 8 and Jessica, and there were some people who were, like, vehement, like, like, Jessica likes 8, it's implied in the game. And there were other people who were like, no, Jessica likes Angelo. You know, she gets jealous when Angelo flirts with other women. And I'm like, really? I didn't see that. And I will say, as a woman...
Like, I didn't see it as jealousy. I saw it as, like, she's irritated that he's trying to get his dick wet when they have more important things
and I will
to
say,
do.
as a girl, like, as a woman, that, like, if you know someone likes you, or I'll say it with me. If I know someone likes me, even if I don't like them back, I would feel a little bit offended and insulted if I also saw them flirting with someone else, because that implies you aren't good enough to hold their attention. So I could understand. I don't feel like her getting annoyed at Angelo for flirting necessarily means she likes him back. It could just be that sort of like, but he likes me, you know. There's so many reasons behind it that Angelo and Jessica.
It's complicated.
It's not my OTP.
That's because it's a het pairing. be honest. But actually, jokes aside, I was actually thinking that's part of why Trode feels like such a well-developed character is because he actually does interact with everybody. You see him interact with Angelo, you see him interact with the hero, you see him interact with Jessica, and you see him interact with Yangus. You see all shades of his personality because he's usually the one you're talking to if there's nobody else around. Like, he feels much more fleshed out because you see how he interacts with different types of people. And you don't get that with any of the other main cast, and that's, I think, one of the big disappointments about the game's story is that the characters kind of feel like they're there, I guess. Whereas, like, even I'd say the party chat in games like 5 make it feel more like the characters are, like, unified and part of a group. And even, like, 7, I'd think, you know, like, I know we don't care as much about I know that, like, we don't care for, like, Kiefer, and I know you don't care for Maribel, but you get a much better sense of Kiefer and Maribel's relationship, and also both of their relationships with the hero in that game, than you get about any other relationship for the main cast in 8, aside from Yangus and the hero.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yes, I do agree, yeah.
Okay.
So we meet Angelo, and Jessica's like, oh my god, she gave me his ring, I don't want it. We're going to go return it to him right now, and because you have the ring, the guard's like, yeah, okay, I guess you guys can go in.
They're not the brightest bunch, for the record.
No, they're definitely not. And then you get a lovely little cutscene, like you find out, oh, Angelo's busy getting yelled at by Marcello, who turns out, and you find this out also if you talk to people in Simpleton, that, oh, Marcello is Angelo's illegitimate older half-brother by their...
Yeah, you get a lot of the backstory for Marcello and Angelo. Like, they do tell it to you, but a lot of it's through character NPC dialogue, and it is very interesting and sad where, like, they had a aristocratic father who was basically a gigantic douchebag. He cheated on his wife, he spent all their money in the casino.
His wife originally seemed to be unable to bear a child, and he had their father had sired Marcello with a servant, and so when he realized, like, oh, my wife might not be able to give me a child, he was prepared to name Marcello, the illegitimate child, as his heir. But then Angelo was born, and he was like, well, don't need Marcello anymore. You and your mother are kicked out, and his mother died of sickness, and Marcello was taken into the abbey. So I guess we're kind of going into the background cutscene that comes later. But
yeah, but it's you basically you learn pretty much that much from, and then you learn that, like, oh, but things were pretty miserable for Angelo too, because at a very young age, like, his father died, and, like,
his
all
mother
of their
and
money
father
was
died.
gone,
Basically, his entire family died. And
was it a fire?
Sickness.
Or
it was
sickness?
plague, I think, or like some sort of sickness came through, and everyone except Angelo died.
And then Angelo gets sent off to the Abbey as well.
So, and that's what you know, basically, by the time you go back to Maella Abbey and see Marcello telling Angelo, basically, like, so you caused another brawl in the Simpleton pub. I hope you're happy. And basically saying, like, you are an absolute disgrace. You are, like, you are, like, horrible. You bring so much shame upon this abbey. And here's, I think, part of the problem with Angelo is, like, as a character, he just kind of takes it from Marcello a lot. Like, he talks back a little bit, but not much. And I don't know why.
It's
like, he's such a snarky
He doesn't
guy.
care is the big... He doesn't... I think a lot of the interesting, but also tough to portray things about Angelo is because he does not care about anything.
Does
he gives
really?
zero
does he
shits.
really? I think he does.
Yeah, or at least he pretends,
to not
care.
But I think he does because, you know, Marcello does, like, he is bothered by the things Marcello says. Otherwise, he wouldn't get so withdrawn and moody after you run into Marcello later on when Marcello basically just insults him. He does care, but I didn't understand why, like, he, like, especially, you know, that scene where the first thing he says is like, oh, news travels fast, so I guess the Templars have a good network. And then Marcello starts, like, yelling at him some more, and Angelo just takes it. He kind of just sighs.
I think it might not necessarily being about him not caring. I think it's more of he's just accepted that this is the way things are.
Yeah.
I guess is maybe a better way to put it, because
like
he knows I'm not going to change because this is the only way I can have fun, and like I mean, maybe not fun, but like this is the only way I think I can enjoy myself, and Marcello's not going to change the way he behaves anytime soon. So why bother putting up a fight? You know, he's just going to punish me anyway. Maybe I'll even get kicked out, which is kind of what he wants at this point. So that might be another thing. Like, he's just trying to not. No, he's trying to get kicked out. He doesn't want to get kicked out, though. Not until, like, he wants to not be in the Abbey anymore. Very clearly, he says
but
that
Marcello
a lot.
threatens him with, "I'll kick you out of the Abbey if you like," because Marcello ends the scene by saying, "You are not to leave your the quarters." The Templar quarters for any reason. If you do it, I will get you kicked out, and don't think the abbot can protect you this time. And then Angelo doesn't leave. You know, that's why he asks us to go check on the abbot, because he's worried about the abbot, but Marcello won't let him leave. You know, so like, yeah. I just felt like
it's complicated, and the game doesn't. It's complicated, and unfortunately, since Angelo's reaction is to close up, which, I mean, it could be very interesting character-wise, but it just comes off as him being very standoffish a lot of the time, and, like, just not wanting to open up, which is frustrating a lot of the time, because for a character like this, like, I know show don't tell is usually better, but for this kind of things, you do need him to tell.
And they just didn't show enough either. That was the thing, you know, they didn't show enough, like, because it could have worked, but what I felt like ultimately was I couldn't tell if Angelo had if Yuji Horii or whoever wrote the script, like whoever was responsible for sort of the character development and script, had an idea for why Angelo took crap from Marcello and acted the way they did, or if they didn't really have an idea. And if they didn't, you know, okay, that's a decision they can make as a writer, but I couldn't tell. You know, and I want to at least feel like the writer had a reason for doing what they did, and I just couldn't tell if it was not well thought out or if I just didn't get it. So
I feel like they definitely could have had more to establish what Angelo was thinking and feeling. I think that's just a complaint for the entire game. Honestly, is that Angelo? It feels like they did not flesh Angelo out very much. They gave him a lot of ellipses and had him shout at you, which might be realistic considering the situations he's in, but that doesn't make for a very interesting character.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah, but anyway, I believe Dhoulmagus attempts to kill the abbot, but he fails the first time.
Because you come in and catch him, and for some reason he decides to leave, which never really made sense to me, but okay, Dhoulmagus, like...
Oh yeah, because Dhoulmagus could wipe the floor with us at that point in the game, for the record.
Canonically, I'm pretty sure, yeah. So, okay, Dhoulmagus...
I think maybe he was thinking more about the guards coming in, I guess, because they were right behind us,
Marcello could wipe the floor with Dhoulmagus.
No, I don't know. Like, I know we're getting into later game stuff, but Marcello is definitely stronger than the heroes at that point, but when we see how powerful he is at the end of the game, it's not necessarily all of his own volition. So I don't think that he could necessarily wipe the floor with Dhoulmagus, because Dhoulmagus is pretty intense.
I don't know. Marcello had pearly gates. That could come in handy.
And not on his own, anyway. But, you know, like, I think I guess, yeah, like, it would make more sense for Dhoulmagus to at least try to fight. Like, maybe throw a few spells around or something.
Whatever,
but,
he pieced out.
You know, whatever.
He wasn't feeling it.
He pieced out, and Marcello's like, oh, you guys are the ones who wanted to kill the abbot. And at this point, I'm sure he knows that we weren't actually going to do anything to the abbot, but he just thinks we're annoying, and he's just
I think he
like
just
that,
feels
so
like he wants to get someone. He wants someone's head to hang for this one, and he probably felt like he needed to break in some of those lovely torture instruments he had.
Yeah, so he throws us into his kinky sex.
Yeah, well, he interrogates us first, which was super hot. And oh yeah, my favorite part was when the abbot, he's like, please, you know, oh my gosh, he turns on the charm with the abbot, and you're just like, yeah, okay, this guy is like borderline sociopath in how he acts, because it just...
No, I
don't think he's actually a sociopath, but just the way he's able to switch between, like, really cold and cruel to people like Angelo and the party a lot of the time, to, like, just absolutely turns on the charm with the abbot, like, oh, your holiness.
I think... Yeah, here's the thing. They establish this more when you're talking to the Lord High Priest later in the game. But I do think that the abbot would interact in a similar way. I think that the abbot can kind of see through Marcello though. Like, I think he knows it. It's just he feels bad and he doesn't know what to do about it, is the big thing. You see, that's much more clear with the Lord High Priest, but had the abbot gotten more screen time, because he's, on all things considered, a relatively minor character, I feel like he would have had a lot of the same things if we had seen more of his interaction.
Yeah, but I love the part where Marcello is like, allow me to find out at least what they were doing in your chambers so late at night. And he's like, oh, you're such a warrior, Marcello, very well. And then Marcello turns so you can see his face, and the abbot kind of can't. And he's like, well, shall we go? And then he just gives you this awful little smirk that's just like, oh.
You little prick. So we get...
Well, then, I love how Trode's part of the reason we get thrown in the dungeon. I thought that was really funny. And yeah, and Angelo doesn't, like, help. Angelo's just like, oh, they took my ring. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, Angelo is, like, the world's worst liar, also, for the record. But, like, Marcello at this point just kind of doesn't care.
He's like, I'll deal with him later.
So. Yeah.
I'm not allowed to torture him. I can torture you guys. That's more fun.
Yeah, so he throws us into his kinky sex torture dungeon, and we're about to get tortured, but then Angelo decides, oh, now I want to help you guys, because if I get caught, then I'm in big shit. But if I don't get caught, then, whatever. So he helps us sneak out, but he wants us to check in on the abbot, because he's worried that Dhoulmagus
the abbot's on the abbot's house is on fire now.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
The bridge is out.
Yeah, so the only way in is to go through the super long hidden underground abbey.
No, that was earlier. That was earlier, Ted. That was how we checked on him the first time. We escaped. Oh, yeah. But then as Angelo's about to, like, double back and go inside and probably get caught for sneaking out, but that's not our problem, because then we look over and there's a fire in the abbey, and Angelo's like, oh no, the abbot, and runs off, and then you realize the bridge connecting the abbot's quarters to the rest of the abbey is on fire, and everyone suspects, okay, Dhoulmagus is back.
Yeah, well, since we didn't talk about that dungeon, we should backtrack, because I know we mentioned this slightly at the beginning during our discussion, but that dungeon, like, you go through the dungeon, it's like, okay, we needed a dungeon at this point, that's fine. It's a pretty standard, just fine. And then you get to the end, and then you've got the tortured soul boss. Yeah. And the boss itself, like, gameplay-wise, it's fine, but it had no reason to be there. Like, it was there because they needed to have a boss fight.
Yep.
And, like, it didn't make sense. Like, if they wanted to have a boss fight there, like, I guess they could have done any number of things. They could have had like a plot fight with Dhoulmagus where we lose on purpose to show how badass he is.
Oh yeah.
They could have had Dhoulmagus summon a monster or something. They could have done a number of things if they needed to have a boss there, but they just like, oh, I'm a tortured soul, you killed me, now my soul is free, kind of. It felt very out of place, and, like, we've got more important things to do right now.
Yeah.
Why are we dealing with this?
That's actually a really good idea for what they could have done. Like, yeah, like that Dhoulmagus is just like, here, fight this monster. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, That's like the typical, showy bad guy thing
Yep.
to do. Is just like, oh, I don't have time to fight you guys. I'll summon a creature, and that'll take care of you. Mwahaha, I'm so evil. But yeah, they could have done a number of other things.
So yeah, oh no, actually there was a really interesting, the scene where Dhoulmagus kills the abbot, I thought was really interesting because, okay, like, it's super dramatic, like, Marcello's hurt, and I love how Angelo's like, Marcello, and Marcello just, like, smacks his hand away when Angelo goes to, like, check on him, and he's like, protect the abbot, that is an order. And I'm like, dude, you're his brother, he's worried about you, like, but that's very Marcello. But then Trode comes in out of nowhere, and he starts, like, shouting at Dhoulmagus,
yeah,
like, do you realize what you've done to my castle? Turn me and the princess back to normal immediately.
Yeah, like I was like, dude, come on. And then, like, afterwards, where Trode kind of mellows out for a long time after that.
Do you realize what happened? Because it's not entirely clear unless you watch. If you rewatch the cutscene, you realize that the abbot threw himself in front of Trode. That Dhoulmagus.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, if you remember, you see. So the way it works is the abbot's standing wherever, and Trode's standing in a slightly different spot. And Dhoulmagus, like, he throws his scepter, right? And we see, actually, this was something that was actually censored in one of the releases of the game. I think it was the PAL region, but in the 3DS version that we have, you see the scepter pierce the abbot and kill him, right?
Okay, yeah, I remember that.
But after that, the abbot's body is in front of Trode.
Oh, okay.
The abbot and like Trode, like his lips start shaking, like he's going to cry, like he's horrified.
Yeah.
So I think what is implied is Dhoulmagus was going to be like, well, I'm going to kill Trode for, like, for lols because he's a pain, and the abbot stepped in front and took the blow. And the abbot was the one Dhoulmagus wanted to kill anyway, so then he's just like, all right, peace out. So, that was. But one thing I really liked about that is that Trode, like, he's just coming in and messing things up. He's being a dickwad. He's, like, clearly not caring too much about what's going on with the abbot. He's just being very self-centered. And after that point in the story, he mellows out a lot for a while because he probably feels guilty. Exactly.
It's a subtle thing. When
you think about it that way,
it's not brought up a lot, but it's like you can infer it, and I think that's really
and I
cool
like and that's why I realized it made a lot more sense once I saw it as, the abbot sacrificed, like, he was going to die anyways, but he threw himself in front of Trode to save Trode's life, and that Trode realizes there's a lot more at stake than just, like, him being turned into this thing.
Like, I didn't notice that the abbot tried to sacrificed himself for Trode, but I did feel like, okay, he feels guilty because he feels like it's his fault that the abbot died, or he just realizes that this is much more serious than he thought it was. It's not just about him, and so, like, no matter, like, how you view the scene, it's clear that that's his reaction to it, which I think is
absolutely
neat. And the scene where the abbot dies is actually really
and the
sad,
funeral
too.
was pretty sad too.
Yeah, and it's also kind of a thing where you do sense that, like, because when you look up stuff about Marcello and talk to people throughout the entire game, you do kind of feel that if the abbot hadn't have died, maybe Marcello would have, like, not turned out the way Marcello turned out, Like, the abbot was actually, like, kind of reining him in and keeping him from being too much of a douchebag. So...
Yeah. So abbot dies, Marcello is appointed to new abbot, and he decides, like, we should really we want to help you avenge the abbot's murder, but I am super busy, guys. I can't possibly come help you, but I have this, like, crappy half-brother that I really don't want here anymore, and I'm the boss now, so I can kick him out. So, Angelo, pack your things. You're leaving. Yeah.
And Angelo's, like, upset about it, but he also was really kind of tired of hanging around the Abbey anyway, so he just kind of accepts it. And it's interesting. Like, that's, again, like, once Angelo joins the party, not immediately, because you do get the really great scene with Trode afterwards, but it feels like slower than what happened with Jessica. But once he joins the party, the interesting and unique things about his personality fade away.
And
that's hugely
and
frustrating.
Speaking of that, I think the next real story event to happen is the fact that Angelo reveals his childhood events of his childhood to Trode. Now, was I the only one who felt like this should have been Angelo talking to the hero instead of Trode?
I like it talking to Trode because, again, like, it gives Trode a little bit of humanity, I think, at that point. Like, because, again, like, Trode at this point feels... It makes him feel less like oh, I'm Trode, I'm the really annoying guy, comic relief. Like, you do get a sense that this is something that... I don't think that it would be something that he would tell the hero, I guess, because he doesn't want to appear weak to those kinds of people, I think. I felt it made sense for him telling it to Trode, you know? It just doesn't seem like something that he'd tell the rest of the party. Like, he definitely wouldn't tell Yankees or Jessica these kinds of things.
I feel like part of the role of the Dragon Quest hero, and I just like one thing I like about party-based RPGs is the idea that the hero is like sort of a not just, you know, like an anchor for the party, you know, that we are the person who brought everyone together, and thus we're like privy to certain things. Like, I guess maybe it's part of the self-insertion aspect of a lot of RPGs that, like, I like to feel like my hero is the important one, and that I would be privy to these sorts of things with Angelo's character. Because what's funny is when you talk to Angelo, if you party chat with Angelo the next day following the child, like that flashback cutscene, he's like, "What are you giving me that look for?" It's like, but 8 doesn't know, so it didn't make sense to me. Like, what? Like, 8's giving him a look like 8 knows, but there's no way 8 does know because Trode was in that cutscene.
I think I like it because at that point Trode and Angelo are in somewhat similar situations. Like, they're both like exiled. They both don't really feel like they belong at that point. So I feel like there's more of a connection there, whereas like 8's just kind of the doofus that's just kind of hanging around at that point. So, like, I get what you're talking about, but I think it works with Trode. But the flashback itself, I feel, is one of the strongest scenes in the game, emotionally, because basically it's showing the scene where Angelo first comes to the Abbey right after his parents had died. And he's like what, 6 at that point?
He looks
tiny.
At the oldest. Yeah, he looks really small.
Yeah, he's like 4, 5, 6, and Marcello's like maybe 10.
No, I think Marcello's older than that. But Marcello can't be more than at least the DQ wiki says that Angelo's in his early 20s and Marcello is 29.
Yeah, so he's like maybe
he can't be more than like 7 years younger than. He's probably like 7 or 8.
So he's probably like. So he's probably like 12, 13 maybe at the oldest. But basically what happens is Angelo walks in, and at that point Marcello doesn't know that Angelo is Angelo. So Angelo's saying like, "Oh, my parents died. I've got nowhere else to go." And Marcello is genuinely sweet and kind, and it's like, it sounds genuine too. It's the same character, and it's honestly at that point very weird hearing those kind of things come out of Marcello.
It's the same VA, but his voice is completely different.
Yeah, and then he asks, "What's your name?" And Angelo goes, "I'm Angelo," and like you can see the facial features snap instantly, and he says, "Oh, you're here to ruin this life for me too." And it's one of the most striking scenes in the game because it basically, like, it shows Marcello's character at the point where he is, like, there might be some good in him, but he is so spiteful that he will ruin anything that he doesn't feel is, like, worth his time. And
but that he just hates everything Angelo stands for as a child of the aristocracy that ruined his life.
Even though Angelo's like 4 years old, he had nothing to do with anything. Nothing about
Marcello
that is his fault.
Can't see that, and like just the delivery when Marcello's actor is like, "Leave, get out. I don't ever want to see you again." Like, it's just so.
Yeah.
It's so pained. It's not just hateful. It's that you can tell it hurts Marcello, and you have to like imagine that it's actually like emotionally painful for him to have this reminder of everything he lost, you know, without, obviously he's not thinking about that Angelo lost everything as well, but you know.
Yeah, it's
really tragic, and it's
yeah, it's underdeveloped, unfortunately, too, because that scene is fantastic, but spoiler warning, after that scene, Marcello is not the soonest you can see, or even like the soonest you can see Marcello again in a story relevant context. Like, I mean, obviously you can backtrack to Mayel Abbey whenever you want, but like the next time you like even have the potential for new like voice dialogue from Marcello is like maybe 10 hours later.
Yep.
And even then, that's missable cutscenes. The next time Marcello is important is like 40 hours later. And it's like, okay, you're setting up a really interesting character here, and then he just disappears.
Yeah.
And
Marcello is simultaneously like the best and worst part of the game.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking plenty about him later on when we...
I have a lot to say about Marcello.
You're going to talk about your kinky fan fiction theories and your incest pairings. I want none of it.
I didn't say anything about that.
I know that's what you're thinking. All right. You're
Fun
very
fact,
you're very Okay, I should mention we've got this like walkthrough of the game's story up here that Qatherine wrote so that we knew what we were talking about. Under Mayel Abbey, she has meeting Marcello, heart, heart, heart. Also, brotherly love in the dungeon is a
so
note
much love
here as well. Yeah. So, at this point, the game kind of after the you get the whole party together, the game starts to feel a little bit more like classic Dragon Quest in that the vignettes start happening. If you're less familiar with Dragon Quest, it doesn't a lot of the time there isn't a huge overarching plot, and the game likes to tell a lot of smaller stories that might have small lingering threads that lead to a larger story. So the first like vignette you really get is when you get to the next town, Ascantha, and you find out that everybody is really, really sad.
Yeah. Everyone's in mourning and has been in mourning for 2 years.
Yeah, that's like obsessive.
It's a long
bit,
time.
actually.
And you find out like the king's wife died, the Queen Sasha died, and he's like mad depressed. And I think Angelo actually has a really funny line of party chat where he's like, I bet she died while they were still young and in love and hadn't gotten sick of each other yet. That's the perfect way to go.
Yeah, the Ascantha area is where I started to not like Angelo as much, because like Angelo says like the king should just like grow a pair and deal with it. And I mean, granted, like I can understand why you would think that way, but it came across as very like harsh and stuff. Like he's like almost to the point where he doesn't understand what a relationship like that would even mean to someone. I guess
I honestly don't think, and that's part of what I found interesting about Angelo, and I can absolutely understand why it annoyed you, but I felt like Angelo didn't understand people very well. Like, despite the charisma with women and like the pretty boy and the player attitude, I feel like he doesn't actually understand emotions very well, in like that he locks so many of his own emotions away, and that he doesn't really know how to express himself, and he feels like a lot of like it just felt like he didn't understand a lot of the emotions that other people were going through, probably and I felt like that was in large part because of the way he was brought up, like that he couldn't, that there was no one really for him to cry on much.
I mean, I get that, and it's all true, but unfortunately it portrays itself in him being a massive dickwad to a lot of people, and it made him very unlikable to me, because it's just like, okay, yeah, like it's been 2 years and people realize that this is a problem, but you can't just one of my least favorite tropes is just stop being depressed now, and then the person's like, okay, I'm not depressed anymore. Like the tough love, you need to get over it scene I've never really liked, because that's not how these things work. You can't just yell at someone until their depression goes away. So
now, who do you think is more of a dick, Angelo or Terry?
They're different types. Terry is more of an asshole, I guess. Like, he's just more of a stereotypical asshole, whereas Angelo is different, I guess.
Snarky.
it's
archest archer.
It's different. Like it's very, very different. And also, I haven't played 6 in a long enough. It's been so long since I played 6 that I really can't compare the specifics very well.
That's fine.
But I disliked Terry more than I disliked Angelo.
Okay.
So you can put that. You can remember that.
I love them both.
You love them both because you like the pretty boy loner, silver-haired. Oh, I'm so tortured and emotional stereotype.
Toriyama does great work.
So anyway, King Pavin's really, really sad that his wife died, and Emma, his maid, says, I need you to fix this. He's
please fix this. And you go, okay. So then, like, in classic DQ style, you, like, talk to people and you find out, like, from rumors, like, oh, there's this place that might be able to help you. And if you climb to this top of this, like, peak near Maella Abbey, let's stop by and say hi to your brother, Angelo. Maybe you can go, like, you can get a wish granted. And then you go to the Moonshadow Land, which has really awesome music, for the record.
The Moonshadow Land is really pretty. It's just, I have my own issues with the Moonshadow Land and how it appears and disappears, and nobody brings it up ever again. It's kind of bizarre. Yeah. It's just kind of like there. But like, I will say that the scene where, so you go there, you meet Ishmari, you're like, hey, you want to help us make King Pavin not depressed? And he's like, sure. But the scene where he's playing the harp and you see Pavin and Sasha talking throughout, that I thought was a fantastic scene.
That was really
like
sweet.
That was really, really that was really, really touching. And like, yeah, it made me have the feels in my feel places.
I thought you were a man who didn't have feels.
No, when have I ever pretended to be the manly man who doesn't feel feelings?
Oh, good point.
Hey, what's that supposed to mean? You don't think I'm... Whatever. Anyway, but the Ascantha area is where things start to feel very much like Dragon Quest vignettes, because as soon as we... Yeah, because as soon as we finish it, like you get a feast from the king because he solved the problem, and then once you and then Trode's really upset that he didn't get to have any because he hides out in the wagon the whole time, and so Yengus is like, "Oi, Gov, I have an idea. Let's go down to Pickham and let the king have a drink, because that's not a bad plan in any sense of the imagination."
And the other actually thing with the going to Pickham was also Yengus was like, "Oh, you know, we might want like a ship or something to chase Dhoulmagus," and I got
No, I think he wanted to talk to Brains so that he could learn.
He just wanted to find out if Brains knew anything about where Dhoulmagus was, because we'd kind of lost the lead at that point.
Yeah, they were like, well, crap, now what? And you really, actually, what's interesting is that you help Ascantha, you help the king in Ascantha because he's impressed by the Trode is impressed by Emma. And he's just like, I command you to help her at once, because, so it kind of shows that he's caring a little bit more about other people at that point, too.
So you go to Pickham, Trode gets drunk, and then, oh no, Magia got stolen.
Pickham is simultaneously a really fun town and a really annoying town, because trying to traverse it's really annoying, because, like, you can't get down the main hallway without paying the stupid
I don't
guy.
pay him out of principle, by the way. I never paid him. I always waited until night or went down the side road, because he falls asleep at night.
Yeah, but if you want to get to... He's blocking where all the shops are, and if you want to get to the shops, you can't wait till night, because then they're all closed.
I walked around.
So...
I said, screw it, I'm not giving you 5 gold. Get out of my way.
Yeah, but I also find the area very well written and interesting. Yeah. Like, the entire place is a pigsty, but there's, like, a specific alleyway in the town, which is dedicated to the people who, like, cannot afford even to, like, sleep somewhere.
Yeah, it's like Beggar's Alley.
There's beggars all over. Yeah, and I found it very interesting. But Medea gets stolen, and that's bad, because she's our horse. I mean, princess.
No, and the wagon got stolen, and then we don't have the alchemy pot. Unacceptable. We have to get it back. They can keep the horse, but Trode's got to carry the alchemy pot on his head, really. Like, we need that.
I don't know if his arms could reach up that high, though, to be fair. Like, would he have to balance it?
Yeah.
You find out, like, you do this whole side quest where you talk to, like, 15 different people to find out where the horse went, which is kind of funny. And also, at that point, you unlock the Dodgy Dave side quest, where you can be like, okay, I want, like, where you can alchemy certain things and then get rewards or trade them for other items, which was pretty cool, I think. But then you find out, looks like Medea has been taken by Red, and Yangus is like, oh boy, I don't want to deal with Red at this moment. And then you go to her place, and like Red is, I think, one of my favorite characters in the game.
Yeah, Red's awesome.
It's just a shame that she doesn't have too much to do after she joins your party, but that's way later in the story. Yeah. At that point. But you get a lot of honestly, this section right here is probably the last we get of Yangus character development in the entire game. And it's super early too. We are like not even close to anywhere, even like the midpoint of the game.
Nope.
Right now. And
yeah, because you find out like, okay, Yangus and Red clearly have history. They used to be in the bandit business together, and Yangus, it's implied at first and then made pretty clear that Yangus had a thing for Red, and
I don't remember if they were an item or if he just had like a crush.
It was. I think they left it deliberately ambiguous, but like I don't think they were ever an item. I feel like there might have been like a drunken fling or two, but that's just like theory on my part.
A game theory.
No, I need more bad evidence. So Red's got Medea, and she's like, I ain't letting the horse go. And
I have to say, I love the scene when you first come in and he's like, oi, ain't seen much of you around here, Yangus. And she's just like, genuinely amused that he would come crawling back to her at that point. Before, like, she just thinks it's funny before she gets irritated at him. I think
I love
really
the way
cool.
Red says Yangus's name, too. There's just, like, a certain, like, weight and familiarity. She's like, Yangus. Red's voice actress is amazing, by the way. Like, she just...
Yeah, she does a great job.
So good. So yeah, she's like, get me the Venus tear, and because she really likes collecting, like, jewels. And the Venus tear is some jewel that apparently Yangus had said, like, oh, Red, I'm gonna get you the Venus tear a long time ago, and then never got it for her. So she's kind of, like, doing that intentionally, I think, to be like...
To fuck with
man
them,
up,
basically.
Yangus.
And I love that she's like you can tell this, like, as soon as she says this, it's like, you bring me the Venus tear, I'll think about giving you back your horse. And you're thinking, yeah, she's not giving
She's
you
gonna
back
think
the
about
horse,
it and say no immediately.
Yeah,
about
basically.
it, changed my mind, not gonna do it, don't let the Deutsch on the way out, Yangus. So,
yeah, it's like she is very, very bitter about, like, Yangus bailing on her, basically.
Like, I think, but I actually like when you get the Venus tear in the sword whatever dungeon.
Oh, that was a fun dungeon. There were some cool puzzles in there, but the boss is annoying.
Yeah, well, I just liked the cutscene you got with Yangus, where he basically basically told the hero about it, and it felt like the fact that he got the Venus tear for Red really felt like he was kind of closing the book on that chapter of his life completely. Like, he'd tied all his loose ends. He'd done what he wasn't able to do as a bandit, thanks to his friends, basically, because he said to 8, like, I tried to get it myself a long time ago, and I couldn't do it. And it makes sense, because Yangus, first of all, that dungeon would have been hard if you were, like, level 1 and, like, by yourself.
Also, that dungeon's hilarious, for the record, too, because... Like, there's the one part, like, it's full of traps and whatnot. There's one part where if you open a door, the door is a trap door. It pushes you off. Red, like, stumbles backward and then falls down a hole.
Oh, yeah. That
comedically, and it's hilarious.
I think your party members comment on it, too. Like, if you party chat, they're like, oh, that was stupid.
Oh, and there's also the tiles that can shoot you straight up into the ceiling and you can bop your head.
Oh, I don't think I screwed that up, and I don't think that happened to me. I think...
It's pretty funny if you manage
maybe I'll
to
go
screw
back
it up.
there. But yeah, I liked that kind of, and then I love the cutscene where Yangus brings the Venus tear to Red, and she's just like, no, I ain't giving back the horse, and then Yangus, like, gets on his knees in front of her, and then she gets really, like, uncomfortable, and she's like, stop groveling around on the floor, be a man.
Yeah, it's that it was such a great scene for Yangus too, because like he cares so much about his friends that he's willing to make a gigantic fool of himself in front of someone who like he has a clearly complicated relationship with just to get the horse back. And unfortunately, like Yangus's personality is still strong throughout the rest of the game, and I still love his character, but his like you could make a solid argument that Yangus's character development is finished before the game even starts.
I disagree, because I think you needed that closure with Red, and the fact that, like, you know, like I said, and I just kind of had this thought while we were talking about it now, like the fact that Yangus as an ex-bandit with his new friends was able to do what Bandit Yangus couldn't do. Like that sort of full circle growth. Like I think that completed his character development, but I agree. This is it for Yangus.
Whether or not it's development, like, or whether it's not it's just like cementing it. That's why I say you could argue that, I think. Whether or not you agree. Like, I think you could make a solid argument that Yangus finishes his character development before, like, you even get control of the characters. But, like, but for sure, after this point, he's still a fun character, and he's still my favorite out of everybody we get, but he isn't given anything to do, really. Like, Red does have an appearance later in the game, but it kind of just felt more like, oh, Red was a very strong character, and we don't have her doing much else, so let's just throw her in the Captain Crow dungeon.
Yeah, I realize now, like, it's different when we play the 3DS version, and, like, okay, like, Red joins, but in the original, it was just like, yeah, Red's here. Okay, she stole, like, 10,000 gold that we could have gotten. That would have been nice. I wouldn't have to farm Goldman. Gold golems.
You wouldn't need to farm Goldman if you sold your freaking monster coins.
So after we finish things up,
no, you're gonna
go back to Pick'em, and we find, oh, Brains is back, and Dhoulmagus apparently was seen walking on water to the western continent, and we're like,
well, he can fly, so why did he even bother walking?
He hadn't been to Baccarat yet. He didn't know how to zoom there. So yeah, and we're like, oh crap, this is really annoying. It'd be awesome if we had a ship that we could follow Dhoulmagus in. And then I don't remember what the connection was that, like, we were like, oh, I think there's a magic ship somewhere, and Trode's like, let's go to Trodain, because
I think it was more like, I'm trying to remember. I believe it was something like maybe we went to Trodain because we needed to learn about ships or something like that.
There was a rumor. I think Brains was like, there's a rumor about a magic ship, but I don't know the details. And somehow we decided, let's go to Trodain's library and read, like, see if we can find any information about that. So finally then we get to go back to Trodain, because I think if you
Oh wait, well hold on, I want to mention that it's kind of, we're very lucky that Dhoulmagus, because it takes a long time to get the ship, like, and you can traditionally in Dragon Quest fashion faff about with the ship before going after Dhoulmagus. We're very lucky that Dhoulmagus didn't, like, stop to smell the roses and stab everybody else he needed to stab on the western continent.
So I think that's explained by the fact that after Dhoulmagus stabs kills his next victim, he's weak and he needs to go rest in the Dark Ruins.
That makes sense. I don't remember them ever.
Yeah,
I don't remember them ever mentioning that, though.
Well, if you talk to someone in Golding's mansion, they say that as Dhoulmagus was leaving, they heard him mumble something about how this body was starting to fail and, like, get weak from the amount of magic it was using, and that they would need a new body soon. So I guess what they end up what Dhoulmagus / the who decided was, I'm just gonna rest for a bit at the Dark Ruins to get some strength back, because no one's chasing me. No one of any worth is chasing me. So yeah, so then you go back to Trodain, which previously had been blocked by a rock slide collapse thing.
Convenient.
Yeah, it's clear now though, which is perfect. That place was, I wrote in our little notes that this place was super depressing, and you actually got a really good line from Angelo in party chat that I thought was, like, something that, I don't know, I feel like this should have happened more, where Angelo, like, clasps his hands in prayer, because you can like see the characters in the party chat. He clasps his hands in prayer, and he's like, I know it doesn't really like, it probably doesn't do anything, but I just wanted to like say a prayer, because all the people who are cursed are like still in Trodaim, but they were like turned into plants. So I just loved the idea of Angelo, like, because it kind of reminds you like, yeah, Angelo is sort of a priest, not just in.
Well, he mentions that he doesn't believe in prayer. He says it just makes me feel a little bit better, is I think one of the things he mentions.
Yeah. Yeah, but I thought it was really sweet still,
Yeah. Now, one thing about I do also like that they do manage to keep a little bit of humor in the scene, because, you meet the Chancellor, and Trodaim's like, oh, my Chancellor! Oh, I was gonna go into, like, an Italian voice for a moment. He's like, oh, my Chancellor, and then he's like, wait a minute, you're sitting on my throne.
Is this what you do all the time? Yeah, that was pretty funny. Like, amidst, very Dragon Quest, like, amidst the sort of tragedy and the ruin, there's moments that make you smile a little bit.
Yeah, it's a very good scene, I think. The one thing is no, actually, I don't really have. Oh, this is what I was gonna say. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit confused with myself. It kind of highlights the seriousness of the situation, where it's just like, yeah, we're trying to get the king to not be like a green troll thingamahoosit anymore, but like more importantly, there are at least 100 people in this castle that are
plants.
Like plants, and that's a problem, and we should.
But hey,
fix it.
there are liquid metal slimes in his castle. That's pretty nice.
Yeah,
Chode, you should let those guys keep living there. So, anyways, we get to the library, which we have to go through like this super circuitous route to get there. And even though you can see the freaking door, but it's like planted off. Plants in the way. Yeah,
it's irritating. It's very, very irritating.
I just wish, like, put the freaking library on the top floor so I don't feel like I did this for nothing. And yeah, so then you get into the library and you read about the magic ship and you're like, oh, that sounds perfect. But how are we gonna get it? And then
we know somebody who can literally grant wishes. Okay, let's go. And it's like, I mean, like, doing the Moonshadow things, like, I didn't mind. It's just...
It felt very convenient.
He's never mentioned again. And he can literally grant wishes. It's just like, that could be very, very useful.
Yeah. Well, I think what I think they didn't do... Like, I think the whole thing with Ishmari is supposed to be... It's not like he can do anything, but he can bring back a memory. Like, he can make, like, tangible... a memory of something that was. So he brought back the memory of Queen Sasha, and he brought back the memory of the ship being at sea. So, and that was how he made like the illusion ocean, and then the memory of the ocean that allowed the ship to go out to sea. But I feel like that wasn't as clearly articulated as is ideal. Because it just ended up feeling like, oh, he can grant wishes. Well, why can't we, like, wish to be inside the dark ruin instead of getting this stupid mirror?
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's
the issue when you introduce something that can literally grant wishes, and he seems to be totally chill with us. And also, it's brought up twice and never mentioned again. Like, even if, like, he couldn't literally grant wishes, it felt like it was just kind of left hanging, Like, it felt like you were going to do something with it, or, like, maybe if there was even just a side quest for him later in the game, it would have felt like it felt like it was kind of an ass pull in a couple of ways, So, I mean, you could have gotten a ship any number of different ways in this game.
I would like to point out, like, did Trodaim not have any ships? Because, like, how were they sending messengers to Argonia?
No, he has a ship.
Yeah, I know, ship. Right?
You see it in
like,
yeah. So
what happened to this ship? Did we need the magic ship?
I don't know. Maybe like they need a ship that they can man with only 4 people.
That's what I was wondering.
Might have been a little bit more reasonable to think. Like, like if the king had a fleet of like battleships that nobody could pilot, that you can't pilot with 4 people, maybe that would make a little bit more sense. Like, oh, we need a ship that we can actually like use. But then again, also Jessica's also loaded, and the people in Port Prospect owe us a favor. So can't
we steal their ship? But anyways, so
borrow.
Yeah.
We're the heroes, remember?
Yangus, can we ask Red for a ship? Call blimey! I don't think that's a good idea, mate.
Yeah, so we get the, so we want to go to the Moonshadow Harp. We need the Moonshadow Harp, like he's going to play his harp and bring the ship back, but, oh no, it's broken because it's not strong enough.
Good enough. I need a better harp. There's a better harp that for some reason I don't have already, and it's...
Oh, and then it begins the sidetrack. The sidetrack.
So I
begins.
love that there's a subtle thing, because Ishmari says, like, I sense that it is in the possession of someone who is in your debt. And if you go to Marcello at this point, because the player for some reason thinks this did not happen to me, I knew who to go to. But if you do go to
I knew it was
if you go to Marcello because the player's like, oh, he's in my debt, right? He doesn't have it, but he actually will point you in the right direction. He says something like that he read in a book that the Kingdom of Ascantha has the Moonshadow Harp. So I thought that was actually pretty clever, that they kind of pointed you in the right direction. I'm just picturing 8 was like,
but
Marcello, you're in my debt, right? And Marcello's like, what?
What? Go away.
Get out of here. I'll have to starve the monks and hire more Templars.
But this is where one of my biggest issues with the pacing in Dragon Quest VIII starts, and it's with the sidetrackiness of everything. And a lot of games do have this problem where, you need X to move forward with the story, but in order to get X, you need to do Y. In order to do Y, you need to do Z, and so on and so forth. Dragon Quest VIII loves to do that. It does that a lot. And this is the first time it really happens in the story, where it's just like, okay, we need to get a ship. To get a ship, we need to find Ishmari, but Ishmari can't do it without the Moonshadow Harp. To get the Moonshadow Harp, we have to go to Ascantha. Like, okay, you know, whatever. We have to. It makes sense to work for the. But you go to Ascantha, and turns out it was stolen. And we're like, oh crap! Now we got to go through a dungeon in order to get.
It was stolen by a bunch of moles.
And the mole, like, it very much feels like. Like, very much feels like Yuji Horii wanted to write a story about silly moles where one of them can sings really, really badly. And, like, it's funny, for sure, and the boss fight's actually really funny because the boss mole has a bunch of mook moles with him, and he sings so badly that he confuses his own teammates,
and they, like,
which I think is great.
They end up, like, killing each other off. It's hilarious. Or, like, hitting him. Yeah, because he plays the harp, and it confuses them. And it can confuse you, too, but his moles seem to get confused very frequently.
Yeah, they have a very high susceptibility to fuddle. So it's funny, it just kind of felt like the game was just padding.
Yeah.
Like, PlayStation 2 RPGs need to be at least 80 hours long. So we better have plenty of sidetracky stuff to go and do in order to hit that.
And also
deadline,
going back to, like, how the game felt like it needed to meet a certain quota of bosses. Like, the last boss until now was the one for the Venus tier. So I feel like they were like,
which was the Mimic
you
King.
went through the entirety, like, you went all the way to Trodain, backtracked to Ascantha. We should have another boss. Because the next boss isn't until, like, the Argon Lizard, the Great Argon Lizard. So yeah, it would have been a really long time before another boss, but could they make a boss that didn't feel incredibly tacked on at the end of a tacked on dungeon?
Yeah, like, a lot of Dragon Quest games, you don't get bosses very often at all. Like, in Dragon Quest I, there's only one required fight before the end of the game that can be considered a boss fight. If you go to save the princess, which you don't need to do, then you have 2 boss fights. Wow. And even
What's the required fight?
The Axe Knight to get Erdrick, Actually, no, I don't think you need to do the Axe Knight fight in order to, because you can beat the game without Erdrick's armor. So there's, like, other than the Dragon Lord, you don't need to fight a single boss in the original
There's no bosses to get, like, the Rain Staff or the Sunstone?
No, you find those in the bottom of at the bottom of dungeons.
Oh, okay.
You find the Stones of Sunlight through a barrier in Titakel Castle. You trade Garen's harp for the Staff of Rain. And that's just at the bottom of a dungeon, too. But even, like, that's the first game, obviously. Like, even later games, like Dragon Quest IV, there's not very many bosses. Like, there might be one boss per early game chapter other than the final boss of that chapter. Or like Dragon Quest III, you don't really get a boss until like Boss Troll or Orochi or any of that kind of stuff.
I mean, even Dragon Quest V, like I'm thinking in the second generation, like you go between, you fight Saber, which that's not a boss, but like, you know, in the time when you're the Monster Master is your title, I guess, would you count the Magma? I didn't really count the Magmageddon one. The Magmageddon one was kind of a boss.
Well, that's a hard fight. So I guess it kind of counts.
But the next one,
you go through like 3 dungeons to get your married, and you get one boss.
And then
fight.
The next one is at the top of the Nightmare Tower.
Yeah, and that's like easily a good 6 hours of gameplay potentially.
Yeah.
So
anyways, it wouldn't be unheard of for a Dragon Quest game to go this long without a boss, but I guess they felt like they needed one, so we have Don Mole, who is hilarious. Okay, so
I like him a lot. It feels like the game. This is where I think the game's pacing issues start to come in, because you fight the mole, and then you get the ship, and I actually liked the ship in this game. I felt like there was a lot to explore, and you could do things out of order, and it was just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And also we get your optional cutscenes with your favorite Marcello.
Yeah, so you can get these at I think there's a pretty wide window when you can get these. I think I actually went to the Neos one right away because I didn't know they existed, but I found the Neos one, and then I think you told me, if you go up here to Sevilla, you get another one. So those are actually like, if you don't have those, I feel like if someone somehow missed those, I feel like they would be very confused by later events, because it's a lot of backstory, like a lot of explanation about how Marcello feels, and a lot of like the corrupt church stuff is brought up here. But again, like, since this stuff, it's like, for one, it's really only implied that the higher ups in any of the church stuff are really kind of assholes, because like we can't have the normal priests be bad, because then otherwise saving the game would become problematic. And again, like, not only is Marcello ignored for like a good 30 hours after this point, the church stuff is too. It's just like, it's brought up that, the church has some sketchy things going on, and then it's not brought up like for a really long time. I really liked those cutscenes, especially the one at Neos. I thought was really great because you saw Marcello brown nosing essentially with High Priest Rollo, and you saw like that he's treated like garbage, you know. But basically Rollo was like, the fact that you are abbot is way beyond your station because you are a commoner, and like you don't even deserve that position. And Marcello was like, yes sir, thank you sir, I have a wonderful jewel for you sir. And you're just like, whoa, like Marcello is a manipulative bastard, both literally and metaphorically. You get it? Because he's a bastard child. He's a bastard. So yeah, and then he pauses to basically insult Angelo on his way after High Priest Rollo.
You gotta take out that repression on something, you know.
Choke me harder, Marcello daddy. Anyways, and Angelo's response to this is.
And also, like, if you try to party chat him, it's like, ellipses, why are you talking to me? Don't talk to me. Go away.
Angelo's party chat, I think this is one of the ones I took a screenshot of. He's like, look, I don't feel like talking to you all. Would you stop trying to talk to me all the time? It's annoying. And you're like, all right.
And I'm just like, I'm trying to see if you're feeling okay, you douchebag. Like, it's, again, like, I get why he would react that way. It makes sense, but it's also... It's irritating because I think it's also, it makes sense for him to close people out, but you don't get to know what he's thinking about it. And I think
it's made worse by the fact that, you know, party chat in the DQ tradition is not voice acted. Well, in the tradition, this is the first game with voice acting, but you know what I mean? Like, there's no voice acting. So, you know, you don't even hear because sometimes with the right delivery, a character who is more like internalizes things can come across. So I feel like if lines like that were delivered, you could kind of get the sort of like repressed, if with the right delivery, if a line like that were voice acted, I feel like it would come across better versus just reading the text of Angelo being like, please piss off, I'm busy grumping. And you're just like, okay, Angelo. So, yeah, the Neos one, and then the one in Sevilla, which is basically just Marcello being like, oh, I'm so great, I was promoted again. Now I'm abbot, and I'm in charge of the guard, the Lord High Priest's guard. I'm the best. And, I love one of the exchange,
there's actually,
between
Yeah, I was gonna mention, like, it's like the one time Angelo gives Marcello sass, and it's just like, your memory's really that bad?
Well, yeah,
you're not that much older than me, brother.
the line was, Marcello's like, well, have we met before? And Angelo's like, I see your memory's gotten worse. How much older than me are you, brother? And Marcello doesn't answer the question, so we will never know. But he's like, yes, it's the rule breaker I had to expel from the abbey. And
so I wish, again, we needed more of that. We needed more development with the Angelo Marcello relationship, because it's so pivotal to later parts of the game.
And it's like,
especially.
Okay, like, sometimes Angelo talks back to him, but sometimes he doesn't, and I don't understand, like, I felt like I didn't understand why. But then when Marcello leaves, you hear guards outside talking about Marcello and basically just kind of mentioning the fact that, because Marcello is like a commoner, like, he's not gonna amount to anything, like, he's already risen above his station, like, there's no way he'll get any further in the church, like.
Yeah, so you do feel bad for him, but at the same time, like, he's a massive prick.
Yeah.
So I feel like they build him up, and, like, you're thinking, okay, he's gonna be involved with something going on soon. And then he's not.
And you keep waiting, and then 30 hours later, you get another cutscene.
You honestly you forget about him. It's just like, oh, right, he was important a long time ago. But anyway, you can explore that at your own pace. It's at this point where you can, like, do mini medals and stuff. And I always like the you get the ship moment in Dragon Quest. It's particularly in this series. It always feels like there's stuff that's worth looking for.
Yes,
you know?
Although you can get your butt kicked pretty quickly, and this isn't just in this game. I feel like this is in a lot of Dragon Quest games where you get the ship, but you're not necessarily at a level where you can, like, easily go cruising around and not worry about the monsters.
I think right around the time I got the ship, I got Thwack for Angelo, and, like, this is like a game where Thwack is actually useful. It clears house really, really well, especially at that point in the game where, like, you just get the ship, and it's just like, okay, entire encounters that would whip you flat are just, like, a non-issue, because you can insta-kill 6 out of the gate monsters that are on the screen at any given point.
Why is this strange pretty boy priest being much more successful with Thwack than myself, faithful servant of goddess?
Oh, Kirill, you simply are to must grow hair out longer is surely key to success.
If Tsarevna is of willing it, shall I be to piercing my ears as well?
Oh, Kirill, you are being much too of wimp to be piercing of ears. You will cry like small child. Yeah. But
wait, hold on. Game theory, Dragon Quest IV and Dragon Quest VIII take place in same universe, confirmed.
Why?
Because Torneko and Ragnar go to Monster Arena.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll get... Oh, we forgot to talk about Monster Arena, like, entirely. You pass that, like, all the way on the way to Pick'em, and you meet Mori there, and Mori's hilarious. I love him.
Yeah, I wasn't sure where to put that, because technically it's a side quest.
Like, you don't ever need to do it. Like, you don't need to talk to Mori once. But, like, he's
just leave him standing on the roof for 80 hours.
Yeah, but like the monster recruitment side quest is probably the biggest one in the game, and, like, you can find all these notorious monsters on the map, which are actually pretty fun to hunt down. And then you have Mori, who speaks with the passion and gusto, and he's a really entertaining character, I think. And I think it was really good that he joined the team, because like, I know that he's not deep, but I think you needed a comic relief character like that on the team, especially considering how depressing everybody else is a lot of the time, especially by endgame. It's just like, okay, and Jessica's just whining about her brother. Angelo's whining about his brother.
Everyone has sibling issues.
and then it's just like you've got Mori, who's just like a ray of sunshine at that point, and it's very nice to have. So, but that's just me.
You are liking Mori's monstrous pit, ragazzo?
The monstrous pit, like, it's an interesting idea, but I don't like anything where I don't have control over my characters. It feels either like it's like you are curb stomping all of the monsters because your team is too good, or it just feels like it's a complete crapshoot and it's all up to chance.
Yeah, it is very, especially like the later ranks. It's so much up to chance. Like, I got through rank S, I think. Wait, which one's the one that you can do? Which one's the one that's not post game? Because at the time of this recording, I haven't.
Rank S is the one where you unlock Mori. Rank X is the one where you can do in post game.
Okay, so I got rank S with the My Three Golems team, but that was completely up to chance whether or not they felt like doing a hostile merger. And I had some bad luck where they just went 3 turns like goofing around, and then they decided to merge, and then the next round one of them got killed on like the first turn, and I was like, well, I guess we're not having a hostile merger and thus not winning. So so it's fun. It's just a little bit frustrating. You'll reset quite a few times. So oh well, monsters games.
Maybe we'll play those one of these days.
I did actually just get the Japanese 3DS remake, so
cool.
Anyways,
I hear that those fix a lot of the problems the Game Boy versions had too.
Nice.
So, but anyway, scrolling through notes. Oh, okay, we land in Baccarat, and Baccarat actually frustrates me because they say that this is the casino town throughout the entire game, and you have to do like a giant side quest in order to actually go to the casino, and then the casino's lame. There's not even a card game there.
Angelo's disappointed too, Ted. Don't worry. But that's okay, because I didn't want the side quest where Angelo got thrown in jail for cheating at cards, and then we had to bail his butt out.
I've never really liked any of the cards in Dragon Quest anyway, because their double or nothing sucks. But, all of them. But anyway, you actually don't need to spend too much time in Baccarat, because
there's nowhere you can go. The biggest house in the town, they're like, no, you can't go in, because things happen. Mr. Golding is sick, and then you find out, no, Mr. Golding is dead and was killed by Dhoulmagus, and we just missed him.
Aw, shoot. I hate how that happens.
But then
if only we didn't stop to see Marcello, we might have saved him.
Oh, man. Actually, this is the point in the game, I think, where if you go back to Maella Abbey, because Marcello is not there, if you talk to one of the monks, they say Marcello went to meet with the Lord High Priest and to take care of business at Neos. And if you go to the Abbey at that point, you get different information during the day and at night, and you find out that Marcello has made some changes since he became abbot. The good news is that he's opened up the Templars to allow anyone to join regardless of their birth. So I think this was never really stated outright, but based on what happens afterwards, it's implied that it used to be the Templars was pretty exclusively for nobility, and that I guess Angelo and Marcello were allowed to join sort of out of because they were part of the church already. But Marcello says basically anyone can join the Templars regardless of birth. You just have to be good with a sword. Okay, so that's pretty in character for Marcello. But he's expanding the Templars, he's getting more Templars, and that's more mouths to feed, and more weapons and stuff. And how's he paying for that? Well, he's basically starving the normal monks, the prayer monks who live in the abbey. The monks tell you that, they're the Templars are eating meat every night and good food, and they're given this really thin soup basically, and so they're sleeping in the dungeons actually because they don't have their beds have been given to other. Why
do you like this guy? He's so mean.
I know.
Why do you like him?
Choke me harder, Marcello, daddy. So yeah, I just love that sort of the fact that you get that extra little background on Marcello. it's interesting.
Easily missable.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's very easily missable. But I just love that attention to detail that you can learn that and gets, you know, again, it's like it goes back to like there's so much buildup for him, and we're not going to see him for a while longer.
Yeah, and then there's a reason why we're talking so much about Marcello for the record. He's, if you've played the game, you know why. But so anyway,
Golding's dead.
So we need to find out. We need to find Dhoulmagus. He went to the Dark Ruin. Can
I just say the Dark Ruins freaked me out when because you get
creepy.
there and you can go in. Okay, like the door's open, you can go in, and you walk for about 5 seconds. And then you hear this awful, like, Dhoulmagus laughter, and then suddenly you're outside.
Oh, yeah, and his voice is very piercing, too, as well. And then you're sent back outside. And so now we get Sidetracks Part 2, Electric Boogaloo, with one of the worst examples in the game, I think. Because you need to get into the Dark Ruins. How do you do that? I forget how you find out, but you find out...
One of the mercenaries from Cash and Carry Golding sent some mercenaries to go after Dhoulmagus, and one of them is outside and tells you, yeah, we heard that you need a magic mirror to get in, and the magic mirror is currently in Argonia, so the other mercenaries went to Argonia to ask the king if we could borrow it. And Trode's Argonia? The Princess Medea is betrothed to the Prince Charmels of Argonia, so I can't allow them to find out that the princess and I are in this state.
Yeah, and then you go to Argonia, and the Argonia section is actually very interesting. Yes. But you're thinking, and so basically, like the king's son is a massive brat, pretty much, and
massive.
Like he's. Massive because he's fat.
Get it? He's fat.
It's actually really funny that like one of the picture side quests for the picture, there's a picture side quest added for the 3DS version where you can use the in-game camera to take pictures of things. And one of them is take a picture of the painting for Prince Charmels, and Charmels is like really thin and like suave looking in it, and then you see actual Charmels, and he's like this little pig of a man, and it's pretty funny how they do that. Yeah. But yeah, so like in order for the prince to like ascend to the throne and become king, he needs to complete an initiation ceremony where he hunts an Argon lizard and gets an Argon heart. And he's being like, I don't want to. I'm so afraid of lizards.
He hates lizards. That's convenient.
So the king's like, you know what? King Clavius is actually, I think, one of the more interesting side characters in the game. We'll have plenty to talk about him in other parts. But he's like, okay, like actually the first scene, he thinks he recognizes him.
He
the
gives
hero.
Eight a really weird look when you walk in, and he's like, could it be? And he's like, no, I thought you looked like someone I knew, but it can't be.
And then that's not resolved until like not even the end of the game, after post game. But anyway, he's like, okay, like I can't just give this mirror to anyone, but if you help me out, then I'll let you have it. And you're thinking, okay, this is an acceptable side quest, I think, because so you have to go and take Prince Charmels to the Argon hunting grounds, but you first have to get him first, find him in the castle. That was
such a pain, because you have to chase him around the freaking castle.
He moves from, but you get to be Munchie again, though. And,
yeah, that was the best part.
And scare the lizard into like his hair, I think is what you had to do.
You go as Munchie. I took a selfie of Munchie with the lizard. I'll have to send it to you.
Hey, girl!
Sup, lizard? How's it going? I'm gonna need you to drop down that hole and land on that idiot's head. Can you do that for me?
Oh. Okay, sure. Sounds reasonable. Yeah. But so
you get Clavius convinces Charmels to do the initiation with Vavavoom.
Oh man, that scene. I mean, granted, the game had actually Jessica. All right. Normally the characters as sex objects thing doesn't bother me too much. I know that, there's sexist implications about, women are only in games as eye candy and whatnot, and those are totally valid complaints that you can have, but most of the time, like, maybe this is me just being a straight guy, but I normally enjoy the view. I guess I'll put it that way.
It too.
And it doesn't bother me. It normally doesn't bother me too much, because, like, I tend to, like, even if the character, like, wears skimpy clothing or whatever, like, I usually try to see what the character, like, because a lot of the times, like, even if the outfits aren't great, developers are usually genuinely okay with giving the character a personality aside from, oh, I'm sexy.
Yeah.
You know? With Jessica, it feels like a lot of the times that is her only personality.
It feels like the sex.
I'm
yeah,
sexy.
It feels like the sex object. It's at certain points in the game, again, because there's large parts of the game where nothing is even tangentially related to Jessica as, like, Jessica's reason, because her reason for going on this journey is largely, I want to avenge my brother. Okay, but there's very large parts of this journey that have absolutely nothing to do with Alistair, and so because of that, what kind of fills the void is Jessica's boobs, which do a very good job of filling many things, like her numerous fan service costumes. And, like, I think one of the best examples was, later on, there's a part where you're, like, Jessica goes missing, and you talk to a lady, and she's like, oh, you're looking for that girl with the big bosoms. And I'm like, really? Really? Like, I don't know. For the record, I do not know anyone who, if you were looking for someone, would refer to them as that girl with the big bosoms.
Yeah. It's like, even in terms of the gameplay, like we mentioned this earlier, like, the hero gets courage, Genghis gets humanity, Angelo gets charisma, Jessica gets sex appeal. Like, she doesn't get, like, hot-headedness or like wit or something like that. She gets
incest.
Sex appeal. Like,
incest implications.
We'll get to that.
Jessica realizes how sexy Alistair is.
And it bothers me, because it really does feel like they had nothing else to do with her. So it's just like, well, we're gonna have her be, like, even Maya from Dragon Quest IV, who wears literally almost nothing. Like, she wears a bikini.
Yeah.
It feels like she has a more fleshed out personality than Jessica does. And that's the game where Maya, US Dragon Quest IV on DS with no party chat, it feels like Maya has a more fleshed out personality than Jessica, and Maya has maybe, like, 20 lines of dialogue total. And that's pushing it.
And I think the thing, like, and you always hear people make the argument, like, you know, when you have a female character who is very overt about their sexuality, people, you know, will make the argument, well, are you saying that girls shouldn't be able to be like that? No. I don't care, you know, if Jessica can, you know, stun monsters with her body, like, okay, whatever. But that so many characters comment on how sexy she is, that Trode comments in the battle record screen about how cute Jessica looks in the bunny costume when she's, like, a couple years younger than Medea, or 1 year younger than Medea, I think. I don't remember.
I think 1 or 2, we were having this argument, I think, because Medea, I think, is supposed to be 18 at some point. Medea says something about how it was just my birthday. I think that's me. I think that's her turning 19. Catherine thinks that's her turning 18. We argue about this. So she's at least 1 year older than Jessica.
So, you know, like,
so it's just like, that could be your daughter, you perv.
Like, that's really what bothered me. Like, yeah, whatever, if Jessica wants to use, like, her sexiness in battle, okay, that's fine. That's like, there's this girl in my building who I think is using her sexiness to let people in our lab use our HPLC machine. Okay, that's fine. We judge her for it, but, you know, she can do that. But, like, the fact that it just ends up feeling skeevy a lot of the time, and that, like, and everyone's commenting on it all the time, and that it, like, becomes one of her defining character traits, that's what I have a bit of a problem with. That it,
like, there's a difference between people hitting on Jessica or thinking that she's pretty and, like, her brushing it off, and her, like, her character trait that's supposed to be so well defined that it's one of her battle commands is sex appeal. you know?
Yeah, like
so,
that she can invest skill points into becoming very sexy. Like I actually don't know what the Japanese, if that's how literal the sex appeal translation is, because I really hate that they translate it as sex appeal. I feel like there's better words they could have used that would like be a little less skeevy than sex appeal. Like, and sexy beams.
Well, there's not really too much else that they can, because the abilities are still the same. Like, she's still blowing kisses and rubbing her boobs on monsters and, like, doing twirls and whatnot. Like, it's still all the same stuff, you know, so...
Yeah, but there's something about using the word sex that makes it really skeevy.
Yeah, although that might just be our unhealthy American stuck-upness on sex, though, as well.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was completely off topic.
Yeah, well...
But the Va-Va-Voom sequence is probably one of the most memorable in the game, though, too. Yeah. So that makes sense. Like, the reason why... The motivation he gives... that King Clavius gives Charmels to actually, like, doing shit is just like, I hear that the princess is really hot. You want to get your dick wet, don't you? And then Charmels is like, oh, man, I love getting my dick wet. That's never happened, even once.
And Angelo's like, I know that feel. I mean, I get all the ladies. Oh. And Yangus is like, cold blimey.
So I think Clavius, like, he's a little irritating prick, but I don't know how I feel about him, because, like, he's supposed...
Clavius or Charmels?
Oh, sorry, I meant Charmels. Sorry.
Okay.
My bad. I do that a lot, if you haven't noticed. But anyway, like, Charmels, I don't know how I feel about him, because he's a terrible, terrible person, and he's supposed to be. But I don't know how I feel about a lot. Like, I feel like the game, especially in a lot of situations, doesn't give him the comeuppance he deserves, I guess, is the best way to put it. Because...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I left the whole Argon side quest being like, that little brat did not get called out on all of the garbage he just did and that we had to go through.
And, like, the King Clavius actually has a decent reason, because he doesn't want to throw his kingdom into like, a state of upheaval, because he doesn't have a legitimate heir anymore. So, like, it makes sense that he did it at the point, but it's just, like, ugh. And he does such, like, okay, this is actually, like, he'll actually, when you get to the Argon ground, and you're about to fight a monster, fight an Argon lizard, Charmels will actually be in your battle party for a turn or two. The game calls him by the wrong name, because there's actually quite a number of spelling errors and, like, weird naming issues in the battle commands. I don't know why, but they're there. What do they call Charmels?
It's been too long, but it was something completely, like, it was weird.
And it's not the only time the game does that, for the record. But he appears, and, like, he'll swing his dagger at him and do, like, 1 damage tops.
Or miss.
And then, like, run away. And he'll run away after, which is funny.
Yeah, that was actually funny. Like, that he technically participated in the battle, but...
Yeah. And then there's the point where it's just like, oh, he's just the amusing little crappy prince. But then there's the point when he crosses the line.
Oh, yeah. Remember, this is the prick who's supposed to marry Medea. And he doesn't know, obviously, that he meets Trode in his disguised, like, his cursed form in Medea, and they keep it secret because they don't want him to find out.
That was actually a good conversation between Yangus and Trode, where Yangus is just like, oi, granddad, why ain't you making him call you king? And he's just like, I don't want him to know that I'm king. And, like, they're actually, like, not at each other's throat. And I thought that was a really good scene for two.
And then there's, like, you guys, we need a bigger Argon heart because, I don't know, it's metaphorical for my penis or something. So we're going to spend the night in the hunting grounds. And the next morning, you wake up, Trode wakes up and finds that Charmels has decided to try to ride Medea. Literally. Like, is on her back.
Like the horse.
Like a horse.
And he's hitting her.
He's got a little, like, riding crop, and he's striking her. And Medea, obviously, like, first of all, you know, she's not, and as Trode says, Medea is not accustomed to being ridden. No one has ridden Medea in the game. She's just pulled the wagon.
And not to mention, like, even if it wasn't literally a person, that is a terrible way to treat Medea.
It's like, it's just really, like, awful, like, just and Medea is like rearing up and trying to get him off, and it's just like, and she's like making like horrible whinnying noises, and it's like, it feels kind of like when you can like view it as kind of basically like spousal abuse, or like, you know, like sexual assault, and like, or as a metaphor for that, and it's like, it's pretty awful. And then
not to mention, bad treatment of animals is often a warning sign that somebody won't. He doesn't respect, like he's like, "Oi, I'll treat that horse some with respect," or something like that, and it's just like, he doesn't view anybody he will treat anybody he views as lesser than him terribly, is also what that scene is supposed to imply as well.
Absolutely. And then he's like, I'm gonna beat that horse for like being, you know, basically I'm gonna break in that horse, I'll show you how it's done. And Trode's like, no, please don't hit her, hit me instead. And he's about, like, Charmels is about to beat Trode, who is like way shorter than him, with his riding crop, and it's saved by Yangus coming in. By the way, there's a really funny pun here that worked both in Japanese and English, because Yangus says in English, "I was over picking me nose. I mean picking flowers." The word for flower and for nose is the same in Japanese. It's hana. So I don't know. What I don't know is if the verb is the same, like if the verb is like the same, but yeah, so it worked out as a really funny pun in both languages. So yeah, Yangus was picking flowers, quote unquote, when we get like the really big Argon heart. Yeah, okay, great.
That boss is pretty rough too. He hits hard. And you come back, and then like he's like, "Oh wait, this is the biggest." Oh yeah, because you have to kill multiple Argon lizards because the hearts you're getting are not big enough. Like he's just like
I need to overcompensate for my small penis.
Yeah, basically. And then like you go back, and like they've been talking about there being like a bazaar that was supposed to be going on at that point. And like, so that's actually awesome in terms of gameplay because you can buy a lot of cool stuff. But then like, because Prince Charmels is an idiot, he decides, oh, there's an even bigger Argon heart here, but the shady guy, I'm gonna buy that from him. And like, I don't need this tiny one anymore. And the tiny one, quotation marks, is like probably as big as like a football or something like that. And I should mention that these things are normally the size of like a diamond, like something you would put into a wedding ring.
Yeah, they're normally like, they would fit in your palm. And the one that you and Charmels get legitimately is probably the size of a large fist.
Like a baseball. Like a baseball. Yeah. Like the one you, like normally it's probably it's like the size of a pebble is what you would normally get. The one you get legitimately is the size of a baseball. The one that Charmels buys is like the size of a basketball, basically.
Yeah,
so,
it's ridiculous and like pretty obviously fake, I feel like.
Yeah, but, and King Clavius sees out the window and he's like, "Oh, Charmels, you shit."
Yep. And I actually really liked the so yeah, like Charmels presents the Argon heart that he quote unquote got, and Clavius, you tell about the scene where Clavius calls him out.
Yeah, well, he doesn't really call him out, but it's very interesting. So he says, Charmels brings the Argon heart, and Clavius says, "Do you say that you got this Argon heart on your own volition? Because even if you got help, I will say that it's okay because you did try to do it." And then Charmels is like, "Nope, I did it all by myself." And so Clavius at that point says, "All right then, I accept this Argon heart as proof of your character." Something to that effect. Which I think is really, really cool because he says, "Okay, I accept that my son, like, you're bringing me this fake Argon heart, so I'm accepting that, yes, my son is a phony, and I gotta live with that." And that was just so heartbreaking when I saw that. And also, he's like, Clavius is like, "What the fuck, dudes? You didn't even get up."
Yeah, he gets really mad at the heroes. I distinctly remember him saying, "Did you even take him to the royal hunting ground?" And so the party shows him like, "Yeah, look at, like, we got an Argon heart legitimately." And Clavius was super, like, just so disappointed. Like, why did he lie? Why did he get why did he feel the need to buy a fake, a fake one that's bigger? I don't care how big it is. I just wanted him to get one by himself. So, but he accepts that you did your end of the job, that he's got to deal with having this awful tosser of a son. Go get the magic mirror, but wait, there's more.
So, you thought the sidetrack was over, right? Wrong! Silly viewers. Man, you don't know Dragon Quest VIII. You put the mirror into the thing at the Dark Shrine, turns out it doesn't work. Losers.
Yep.
So, you gotta figure out, like, what the heck is up with the mirror at this point. And like,
I think if you talk to people in Argonia Castle, they mention that there's some mage who used to work in the castle who is now off somewhere in the forest west of here, and he might know how to fix the mirror, because even before you leave the castle, they're like, yeah, the mirror doesn't look quite right.
Yeah, and so you go and find the guy at the spring. You can either, I think you can go before you go to the Dark Ruin, but if you do go to the Dark Ruin, the people from Baccarat are still there, and they'll direct you to where you need to go.
Actually, if you go downstairs, 2 of the people from Baccarat are downstairs in the castle in Argonia, and they're like, "Can we please get the mirror?" And the guard is like, "We're not giving the mirror to the likes of you." So their plan wasn't working out too well.
Yeah. So you go to the guy at the spring. And he's just like, this is the point, because again, like, at this point, I think you could initiate one of these cutscenes at any point in the game. This is just the game making sure that you go to this guy at the spring. And when you go to the guy, you find out that the spring that he's at has the power to cure curses. So you're like, okay, that makes our job a lot easier. Let's have
we're done.
Let's have Medea drink some of the water. And this is the point where Medea turns into her human form for the first time. And that was a really sweet moment, because while we did get some character development for Medea in the form of flashbacks and whatnot before this, like, this is the first time you hear her voice, and like, she speaks about how much she missed the hero and whatnot, and then she turns back immediately, like within a couple of seconds.
Before even Trode can take a drink.
Yeah, and what's actually interesting is that after this point, Trode says, "I'm not taking a drink of that because I don't want to." I don't want to. It's not fair for me to turn back into a human when Medea can barely stay in her human form. Yeah. So that's like, Trode is a great character, I think. But after this point, anytime in the game, you can go back to the spring and you can talk to Medea, and she'll turn to human form, and there's a lot of dialogue with Medea.
Yeah.
A lot.
And it changes as you go through the game. Like, she'll comment on events that have happened, and she'll talk, like, if you talk to her, if you go back to the spring almost immediately, she'll talk about Charmels and how, like, she's kind of concerned about her engagement to him. And she also, there's a line of dialogue for just like, "I know you like talking to me, but I'm too full. I can't drink any more water." Oh yeah, if you try to drink, like, if you try to ever drink twice in a row, it's like, Medea is too full. "Why you drank so much water, Medea? Take a small sip." Just take a little sip. Medea, why didn't we just, like, get, like, a giant jug of that stuff and, like, give her, like, a sippy bottle, and, like, she can take a straw and take sips, and, like, she can walk. Why can't we drop the cursed armor and stuff we get in the water? I don't know. Why can't we drop 8 in the water? I don't know. 8, drink the water, see what happens. By the way, I did figure out, so one thing we didn't mention is that if you've played the game up until this point, you may have noticed something odd, which is that there are enemies that can curse your party and curse members of your party and make them unable to move for a turn. 8 doesn't seem to be affected by this. Strange. Ever. Strange. How odd. And I didn't actually notice that, though. When I didn't notice it when I played the game. Because you don't right away, because you're just like, oh, I guess it missed, because the moves do have a chance of missing. Yeah. And the other thing that's interesting is 8 cannot equip cursed equipment. I was wondering how they would handle that. The game won't let you? It just says cannot equip. Yep. Like everyone should be. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, because everyone, I looked at it because I had a Devil's Tail. and everyone should be able to equip the Devil's Tail because it's just an accessory. 8, it says cannot equip.
Oh, that is really neat.
Yep. 8 cannot be cursed, which when you realize, like, in battle, because you don't find out why 8 can't be cursed until post game, but when you find out, like, oh, in battle 8 can't be cursed, and you're like, well, that makes sense because he was the only one who wasn't cursed at Trodaine when Dhoulmagus did bad things. Yeah.
Now, when did Medea start being able to talk to the hero in the sleep? Whenever you go to an inn or like that, I think it wasn't.
It's
long
after the spring. I believe it's right after the spring. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can get a dream sequence where Medea talks to 8.
And it's like you get so much. It made me really like Medea because again, like she's given I'm the posh princess and I will do as my father tells me. But she's given a lot of depth, I think, and it's a lot of very subtle depth too. As well, because it's just she's given so much dialogue, and her relationship with the hero is so well developed as well, where they grew up as friends, and he was really the only one her age that she could talk to at the castle, and like you get a lot of fun stories too, like how like you learn little tidbits about her, like how she doesn't know how to swim and things like that.
Oh yeah, that was super cute.
It got me to really like Medea, and like I felt like Medea is like a Nera from Dragon Quest V, but actually given good character development.
It's almost like she's the best aspects of Bianca and Nera because she has the childhood connection to the hero that Bianca has, but she has her princess her princess demeanor and her sort of like, at least on the surface, demureness is more similar to Nera.
Yeah.
And I think, the way she talked to the hero, especially, both in the spring and the dream sequences, made me really feel a sort of relationship between the two of them.
Yeah,
like something that, even though in some ways it was telling it, the delivery helped show it. The delivery helped make it feel real.
It's a very nuanced delivery where you feel like she really does care about, and like one of my favorite scenes is I forget if it's a dream or a spring conversation, but Medea says something like, I'm really grateful that you keep on working towards this. I could not blame you if you had decided to give up at that point. And it's like, to some extent I felt like the game was talking to me, the player, where it's just like, for once the game isn't shaming me for turning it off. Screw you, Mr. Rossetti and all you Animal Crossing people. I turned game off for 3 years and suddenly everyone in my town moved out. Like, what the heck? Okay. So, yeah. But yeah, Medea, I think, is a really well done character. Certainly much more interesting and relatable than Jessica, at the very least. So, yeah. So, you talk to the guy at the spring, and he says, oh, you just need a flash of bright light on it, so go find this specific monster and have him cast Giga Flash on you. And I'm like, okay.
Did you know where to find the monster?
Yes, I did, because I ran into it, but I ran into it by accident just exploring the overworld, and I was just like, whoa, he can blind all my people instantly, and
that sucks.
Yeah, it does suck, but then it was just like, oh, I remember that when I saw the cutscene, and thankfully the game does tell you very specifically, it's under this bridge, go there. Yep.
And I think you kind of, like, you'd have to really go a roundabout path to get to Baccarat if you didn't go under that bridge, so the game does kind of force you to run into him on your way to Baccarat, and then it does remind you if you forgot.
Especially since the world doesn't loop. The world doesn't loop in DQ8. Which is really
annoying.
It doesn't, and it's really, really annoying too.
The world is flat, confirmed.
You'll just keep on going straight, and like you'll turn around, and the island you were just past is suddenly like only 3 feet behind you, even if you've been going straight for like an hour. It doesn't loop. It's so stupid. I know. But
so I mean, at least that was simple, but at this point you're just like, man, I'm really glad Dhoulmagus has just been like Netflix and chilling in the Dark Ruin for like forever.
It takes probably at least a good 8 hours to get back to Dhoulmagus from
right.
when you, even if you're not sidetracking all that much. It takes a long time to get back to Dhoulmagus. And thankfully, the Dark Ruin is a fun dungeon.
Oh yeah, that was super cool.
And you learn, like, you hear all these ghosts talking about, like, a Dark Lord Rapthorn, and, like, there's all these cool pictures on the wall and whatnot, and then you finally reach Dhoulmagus, and he's like, oh, I'm healing. And then you get the...
He's like, I'm not seeing visitors, and you're like, well, I'm here.
Yeah, and then you get the Dhoulmagus fight, which is awesome for the record. Hard as balls, but awesome. Like, oh, we should talk about the game's difficulty before we get to Dhoulmagus himself. This game's difficulty is kind of all over the place. Like, it starts off pretty tough. Like, the first boss isn't easy. The squid boss isn't easy. It gets a little bit more manageable as you get more party members. And then once you get the ship, the difficulty skyrockets again. A lot. And
you go anywhere, and it feels like as soon as you, like, first of all, you're getting your butt kicked on the water. Then, if you're like me, you go to Neos first because it's the closest, and you get your butt kicked on Neos.
Yeah, and like, God help you if you try to go to Sevilla, because the monsters there are like a good 4 dungeons ahead of your strength at that point.
Yeah.
And I mean, things get more manageable for a little bit, and then you get to Dhoulmagus, who is honestly probably the hardest fight in the game, considering where you're supposed to be level-wise at that point, I would say. Would you agree with that? At least one of the hardest fights.
I didn't have that much trouble with Dhoulmagus.
I barely scraped by. Like,
okay, I didn't have as much trouble, but again, because depending on how you explore, your level could really be all over the place. So I don't know. Like, I don't remember what level I was for Dhoulmagus. And I remember I was a little bit confused at first about, like, do I need to attack his clones?
I believe it's, there's, like, I think...
You're supposed to.
You're supposed to, because it's not one... There are some RPGs, like Paper Mario is the first one I think of, where if you try to attack the clone, the attack misses and the clone disappears. This is
I would think you would say Abominable Showman.
Well, I think, like, you're right in that is a case, but Paper Mario is also a game I've played far more than Dragon Quest IV, because I've been playing Paper Mario since I was, like, 2001?
Regardless, doesn't
8
matter.
Years old. I've been playing that game since I'm 8 years old.
Dhoulmagus.
So,
I didn't think he wasn't the hardest boss for me.
He was rough, though. He was, like, especially his second form. First off, the bird form for Dhoulmagus is really cool looking.
That thing's baller looking.
Yeah, and then, and, like, he hits hard. He's got, like, tier 3 spells, if I remember correctly. Yeah. He does a ton of damage. He's got a lot of health. And, like, there's this really ominous music playing. And, it's just a really fun fight, is the big thing.
I love the way they handled the music for Dhoulmagus, because Dhoulmagus Phase 1, it just kind of plays sort of I forget what the track is called, but it's basically kind of Dhoulmagus' theme. It plays in a lot of the scenes where Dhoulmagus is present. It's got like a really sinister vibe to it, and I think it plays in the Dark Ruin, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it maybe a different theme plays, but it definitely plays in a lot of the stuff where Dhoulmagus. It's like a very like understated, very ominous kind of string piece, and then when you get to the Dhoulmagus fight himself, you get something that's actually very similar to a lot of Dragon Quest final boss themes, where it's a lot of low brass, and it's very methodical, and like a lot of bump, 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 ba-ba-da-ba, kind of.
Since I've been playing Theatrhythm DQ, I can say for a fact it feels very similar to the final boss themes from 5 and 6 in particular.
Yes,
it reminds
that's
me
the
of.
one I'm thinking of, and
5, yeah.
5 in particular. It's a
fun fact that the track that plays for the Dhoulmagus Phase 2 fight is just called Dhoulmagus, even though it plays for a handful of other bosses that are not Dhoulmagus.
Yeah, so it's just a great fight. And unfortunately, like, we'll talk more about this, but like, I know that Dhoulmagus himself as a character isn't very well rounded. He is basically just a puppet, like a puppet body for Rapthorn, who you learn about in that dungeon. But you don't learn about. I don't think they call Rapthorn by name. I think they just call him the Dark Lord. I think they mentioned his name once. I am almost positive they mentioned the name Rapthorn by that point. But I may be wrong. But if I am, please let me know. But anyway,
guys, we beat the game. We beat Dhoulmagus.
Yeah. But like one thing about Dhoulmagus that I just like, he had a lot of presence. I think is the big thing. Like the jester outfit and all this other stuff. Like it felt like he was like in how he was mysterious. You didn't know what he was doing or what he was up to.
He only tried to kill very specific people.
Yeah.
And he was always successful, and he was always like one step ahead of us up until now. And that's like it's aggravating when you're chasing someone for the entire game, you know, and like they're more powerful than you.
Yeah. But anyway, we've been going for over 3 hours. And we beat the game. We beat Dhoulmagus, right?
Woo!
Yeah, so obviously discussion's over because we beat the game.
Yeah,
good game.
Good talk.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. But Trode and Medea are still cursed. That's a little odd.
That's weird. Like, maybe...
They like, freaked out, and I was like, guys, shouldn't you, like, go drink some more spring water and see if that fixes it?
Yeah, so I would say that since this is about the halfway point of the game, this should be the halfway point of our discussion. Because this is probably,
right.
If we keep on going at this pace, it probably will be a 6-hour discussion. Okay,
well,
you know what?
We won't have to talk about gameplay again.
Yeah, but we only spent like 40 minutes on gameplay.
Yeah,
we have a lot of things to talk about for the end of the game's story, too.
Yeah.
So, I hope I did not expect this to be a 2-parter. Like, I was thinking, you said it's going to be a 3-hour discussion. I was like, no, we can squeeze it down. No.
Because we decided to go blow by blow for the story, but I feel like if we didn't, we would, like...
This isn't Dragon Quest... This is not Dragon Quest VII, where it doesn't matter. Things do matter.
Everything matters.
So, we're going to take a break. I don't know how long that break will be, but we're going to take a break. Next time on Ted and Qatherine Z, we will finish the discussion, hopefully. I would really rather this not be 3 parts. Later, everybody.
Qatherine, psychs up!